Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hansen, joined by Kyle Hilliard.
Hello.
One Ben Reeves.
How's it going?
And Mr. Andrew Reiner.
What's up, baby?
Oh, good Lord. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah,
we got a heck of a show here.
Woo!
Not only is the back half of this show a big old discussion about the second half of BioShock. We're reviving Game Club. This is the final episode of the BioShock Game Club. Reeves, I'm sorry you didn't get to join us this time around.
Missed out this time around, but
we might get you next time. Yes.
I wasn't in it either.
Yeah, you haven't been on one Game Club yet.
Why didn't you apologize to me?
Because I don't think you volunteered to play BioShock. But we have a real good crew and a good discussion about the end of that game. So, can you ever get sick of talking about the end of BioShock? It's been a long time since the industry's done it. And so it's nice to get a focused effort. Diving right into that mess.
Excited to listen.
Yeah, thanks. But on this episode, we are talking about our new cover story, South Park, The Fractured But Whole.
What?
That was Kyle and Ben Reeves and I going on that cover story trip.
The classic Quantum Break team. I don't know.
The classic Rise of the Tomb Raider team.
Oh, there you go.
Back in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of impressions of what that game actually looks like, everything we saw, everything like that. We'll go over all that. Then we have Andrew Reiner here to talk about Gears of War 4. Coming out next week?
Well, this Friday for early access to people that spend the $100 on the Ultimate Uber edition.
It's the Forza thing again. Okay.
They Uber it over to you. You get that edition this Friday.
Perfect.
But it does come out the following Tuesday for everyone else.
How strong are your opinions on Gears of War 4?
They're huge.
I'm
Super
serious.
strong, like a big muscle.
Okay.
They're as big
Like
as
a muscle-
Marcus Phoenix's bicep.
Like a muscle on a fractured butthole.
Fantastic. We're also talking about something that I have a lot of thoughts about that I have not even mumbled a word to Ben Reeves about, which is Paper Mario Color Splash on Wii U, which is also coming out this Friday. Ben Reeves, you reviewed it.
That's
I've played a healthy amount of it, and I'm ready to explode. So before we get to that, though, that's right.
Like a fractured
We're going to talk about this
butt
South Park game.
hole.
South Park Fractured But Whole. First time we've had a butthole on the cover of a Game Informer.
Finally.
Wait, is that a pun?
Yep, correct.
Oh.
Reeves, you wrote this cover story. We're all at the studio. This is Ubisoft San Francisco, known for
Rocksmith, of all things. Which I didn't even know until we started doing research for the story. It was like, wait, what have these guys even done? Oh, not a lot. Because the office was like just a marketing office for like 20 years, and then they finally started doing Rocksmith games.
To be fair, Rocksmith is really, really well done for what
it's
it
great.
is.
It's a good game.
Yeah.
I don't mean to diminish the quality of that game, but it's just like...
But you go from Obsidian, an RPG studio that made the last one, to a team that's done music games.
Yeah, it just seems like a weird choice. But then when we went and visited the studio, you find out that they've hired up a lot, and like most of the team wasn't there for Rocksmith. They've actually been hired on because they came from other companies, other places. One guy worked on like BioShock. They had an animator from the actual South Park animation team.
Couple animators they hired over from Obsidian.
Right.
Narrative lead from Telltale. They have an interesting team that they've assembled. And it reminds me a little bit of like the Horizon Zero Dawn cover story trip, just in terms of a studio creating their first RPG. And it's like, well, a lot of people in the studio like RPGs. I think we could probably pull that off. Like the senior producer, Jason Schroeder.
Right.
He was playing the new Star Ocean, which is like, that is the mark of an RPG fan when you're going to Star Ocean 8. Like, I know it had terrible reviews, but let's rock it. So there's the pedigree for making the new South Park game.
Playing Star Ocean.
That's right.
He knows what a bad RPG looks like.
And now they're trying to make a good one. What did you guys think? What did we see? Give us the whole rundown.
I liked what I saw. Kyle, you?
Yeah.
I think we all walked away pretty excited. Like, if nothing else, this game is going to be funny. Because, Matt and Trey, who South Park creators, like, they're behind every, like, word in this game. Well, I mean, not every word. I shouldn't say that. But, like, they're behind the main script of the game.
Right.
And what we saw was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, we saw cutscenes, we saw gameplay, we saw a lot of stuff, and it was like those Trey and Matt, like they're totally in, and their humor is applied here, and it's funny. Like we were laughing just them showing us demos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was the funniest thing you saw?
That's
Do
like
we want to reveal that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure we talked about it in the cover story.
There was a fart joke.
There were a number of fart jokes.
Some kids saying bad words.
I did. It's a joke that we ended up seeing a couple times over the course of many presentations, but we saw Drunk Randy, like
which is a
rampaging
big theme
through the
early
town.
on in the game.
And it maybe it's just because we saw it a lot while we were there that it's sticking out for me. But just they were like, he like busts into this room to start a fight, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, he's a red wine drunk. That's the worst kind of drunk." And he's just like rampaging around, just like trying to start fights with everybody.
And there's a good Trey Parker line where he's just insisting on you giving him his keys back so he can drive.
Do the voice.
And it's always this close up, and he goes, "Give me my keys." It's just like good exasperated Randy voice, and it made us laugh like idiots every single time that we saw that, which was a lot.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember specifics, but we saw an argument between the new kid who you play in this game and the last game, between his parents. And it was just them arguing, but also trying to be like lighthearted and be nice towards the kid. And there was something in that dynamic that really made me laugh. Also, you can change your heritage in this game, which is a whole system to like adjust the difficulty.
Right.
And so apparently, in this example that we saw, they had changed it so that they were Native American. And so the parents of the new kid just like pop their head in the bedroom and they just have this one quick line where it's like, "By the way, we're very proud of our Native American ancestry. I know we never talked about it before." And then just like slam your bedroom doors.
Also, Professor Chaos, one of his like evil plans is like covering the sort of city in lava, and by lava it's like red Legos. He's just covering the world in red Legos, and they showed us a sequence where one of the kids is like trapped behind red
that was
Legos.
really good too. It was like Craig, I think.
Yeah, and he's like, "Guys, I'm not gonna make it," and they're like, "Come on, Craig, you've got to come over here," and he's just like standing by a pile of red Legos.
It's
like,
just played super earnest, but like they're kids playing a game,
which is what that's like
real.
A main focus of theirs is like that idea of those kids. For them, everything is real, but we get to take a step back and see that it's all absurd and imaginary, which is always one of my favorite things about South Park.
Yeah,
like I didn't go on the trip because I apparently don't get invited to be a part of anything.
What is this?
But
It's a new character he's working on.
yeah, Reiner Downer. But they are so damn smart, Trey and Matt. Like the first game focused on video games and recreating like a fantasy RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going into the big Marvel kind of DC movies. This big thing that's going on now. Every one of those movies,
all comic book movies,
is gargantuan, and they're just right on that, and it's perfect for the gaming verse to absorb that. But their characters that I've seen, I don't want to reveal Timmy's character, but God, that slayed me. Like I thought that was hilarious.
This is Professor X. I think we've talked about it before. Yeah,
but I don't want to reveal what they do with it. There's something really clever there that I want everyone to experience on their own. But they nailed it. Like all those characters, like their alternate identities as heroes are hilarious and just a perfect play on what's out there right now.
Yeah.
Even just the setup for the game is amusing to me because you start out, you're basically still playing the Lord of the Rings style RPG, and then Cartman's like, "Well, I'm not. This game isn't cool enough for me, and I want to be like in charge again." So he
needs to like bring you down a peg because new kid has like he is the Lord, he's the king, he's King Douchebag by the end of Stick of Truth. It's like time to reset this DM.
Kind of a clever way to reset everything too. So you have to like earn new powers and whatnot. But he's like latches onto this missing cat named Scrambles, and he's like, "This cat Scrambles is gone, and I need to go find the cat." Yeah, nailed that Cartman there. But and so he's just like obsessed with this like finding this cat Scrambles, and they're like going into like crack dens and stuff, and like all this other terrible things is happening, but they're all only worried about getting Scrambles back. So
it's that fun level of South Park humor where like the town is dealing with adult issues and the town is actually going to hell, but the kids are just focused on the game.
Right.
And then throughout the course of the game, of course, like it builds up to, there's a larger issue here. Like in Stick of Truth, it's Nazi zombies. We don't know exactly what the bigger themes are here. Like Professor Chaos is a villain, but that's only in the earlier parts of the game.
Yeah.
Eventually that's going to fade away.
There's definitely like a shadow behind him somewhere, like moving things.
Right.
A mysterious figure doing something else.
How much did you guys see? Like in terms of length, like
a fair amount. It was an interesting trip. It wasn't like a sit down, here's the demo of the game. It was scattered, and so we went like across a bunch of different disciplines. So it's like when we're seeing the example of like, hey, here's how the audio team is putting the farts together and working with the composer from South Park on the music. Then we see like snippets of, here's a battle against a bunch of Orthodox Jewish folks, or it's like we're at another demo. It's like, hey, we're showing off animation. You see like another snippet here, so it's a little bit scattered.
Yeah, we got a weird amount of like story info from our like audio meeting, like our meeting with the like audio team, because of, like our lore meeting wasn't scheduled until the second day, so it's just like the way info kind of rolled out to us was a little like stilted. But like in the end, I think we saw a pretty healthy amount for the game. Like, I would say maybe
a good scatter shot.
Above average almost for a cover story.
My big concern with this kind of sequel, if you will, is absorbing a world in TV and movies is very different than in games where you could watch like 15 seasons of the show or 20 seasons of the show and still feel a nice connection to South Park. Whereas in games, when you retread those same steps, it starts to feel very samey, and it's the same city, right, from the first game.
Yeah.
In the time you guys played, did you get a sense of like they're doing new things there to keep it fresh?
This was, one of the things that I was worried about. We can kind of break down what we were worried about before the trip in a little bit here. But yeah, so it's interesting because they talk about like Jolie Menzel, who used to be at Telltale, and she's kind of the narrative designer here working with Matt and Trey. She was talking about like being on pins and needles watching season 19 because like, oh my God, they add Soda Sopa and like any little detail in the lore for South Park, they have to adapt and throw into the city. But they have rearranged things a little bit. They added like an extra row of houses, which doesn't seem like much, but it's something onto the map. Yeah. There's a big tower in the upper left that I don't know exactly what it is. So they remixed the town a little bit, but I still think it's going to feel very familiar because, I mean, they have to have the same town.
It has to be the same thing, yeah.
You're still going to have Kenny's house. You're still going to have Stan's house. Like,
and they've like tweaked some rooms here and there. Game Changer, you can go in garages now. They have like depth.
Oh,
yeah. It's not just like the one little layer before.
Yeah, and they've added like new rooms to familiar buildings, like maybe a door that you can access in the first game now leads to like a whole different section.
Or the police station's a lot bigger this time around. And also something different is because it's like they're superheroes, they're going around at night quite a bit. So even though I think there were some night sections in the first one, the idea that it's going on and that the town's getting darker over time is one of the interesting things that they talked about, like working with Matt and Trey, is one of the big rebounds they had to do was like, I think it was because like Trey is watching Gotham or like some darker stuff and then the town just started getting darker and darker. And then eventually Matt and Trey realized like, this isn't South Park anymore.
Yeah, it's not
like,
South Park. We got to go this way. And then
time to bounce it back, folks.
Then it would be too humorous. And they're like, well, now we still want to like do the superhero stuff. We're straying too far from that. So it was interesting kind of like watching them like adjust when they were like finding that script.
By the way, Fractured takes place like a few days after Stick of Truth.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Which is funny. Then they're gonna play it up with some jokes and stuff. But like then you look at stuff that like Soda Sopa. Like there's this whole new section of the town that has appeared like over the course of a couple of years.
There's been 2 episodes or 2 seasons of the show, and like the 3rd season is airing now between the 2 games.
Yeah, and that's like all in that couple days or a couple minutes or whatever.
It's supposed to have happened all in those.
Where do
2
these
days.
games slot into the timeline of the show?
Man, they don't.
Have they revealed that? No.
Well, no. I mean, it's up to date. But we asked them on the first cover story trip about that, and like even Matt and Trey are like, man, like it's South Park lore. Like, it's all pretty loose. Like we just put things where we need them, and so it's kind of taking that approach where roughly, it'll be current in theory with season 20, which they're airing now. But it's not like it is set in 18.5. It's not like a Walking Dead
alternate universe, New 52.
Yeah,
Earth 2.
I mean, they're definitely because 20 is airing currently, right? 20.
Yep.
So like 18 and 19 characters are in there, like Classy and PC Principal and stuff. Like we saw them in cutscenes and stuff like that.
Right.
So.
But talking about like just how fast and loose these things are coming in, it's really interesting to see Ubisoft San Francisco working on this and thinking about the fact that the whole coon concept and the superhero concept, is probably cooked up. We don't know, but in theory, in like that 6-day span when they're creating a new South Park episode, and now just like that haphazard lore of like, I don't know, what is Stan's character, Toolshed? Yeah, it's like Toolshed over there. It's Stan, superheroes. You go now. Ubisoft San Francisco has to spend years like diving into this lore that was just a pure whim years and years ago for Matt and Trey,
and figuring out how those powers work.
Right?
Because you go back and watch those original like Coon and Friends episodes, and like everybody's got a crazy costume and like. Kyle's in a kite get up. You're like, what kind of powers does he have? But so and then like just that team rolled out like how do these powers work and like what are the benefits and like okay, Kyle's sort of like a healing class character, but
he can also fly in and pull people back.
Yeah, since he's a kind of a kite, he can kind of like grab characters and pull them back kind of like they were kites.
Yeah,
kind of kiting his friends, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So I think we talked about it a little bit when Elise was on this podcast a while ago because I knew this cover story was coming up and I was playing through Stick of Truth again. And that's why I unloaded a whole volley of thoughts on her Gamescom session with South Park. But I was talking about how I really wasn't a fan of the Coon and Friends episodes when they first aired. I went back and watched them before this trip and they're better than I remembered. I forgot it was connected to the whole BP oil spill.
Yeah, that was the best stuff though, which is like the best stuff in those episodes was not the Coon and Friends stuff, I feel
We're
like.
sorry.
Yeah, but I think I really did not factor in how much they can pull from the rest of the South Park universe for this new game. There's still so much that they haven't even touched on. And they said that like Captain Hindsight and Cthulhu are going to be briefly in this game, which were big parts of those episodes.
Right. But not the main thing at all.
No, it's not like Cartman can summon Cthulhu whenever he wants, as far as we know, which is how that trilogy ended.
They were a little cagey about Cthulhu,
Yeah, but I forgot that, like, they can bring in, like, Super Friends. Like, those old episodes. Like, anything in the South Park universe that kind of relates to superheroes they can draw upon. And there's plenty of stuff that's not related to superheroes at all that they're still pulling from.
Right. Were you worried because you're not as big of a fan of superhero stuff and you just like the setting of Lord of the Rings better?
Yeah, I like the idea of the specific game parody aspect of Stick of Truth. The idea of, like, kind of taking Skyrim and making fun of it, making fun of that whole genre. Whereas the idea of, like, we're just going to make fun of pop culture at large. And I guess superhero films, like, it's less fun to me. Like, I like games commenting on games. I think it's a more interesting, like, not taken path in the industry. But that really, I left the trip feeling much, much better about the breadth of this game and the different stuff they're touching on.
Yeah. I can't remember if they said an exact hour count, but they did say it would be a little bit longer. They said stories a little bit longer, and then, like, just gameplay wise, there's probably going to be a little bit more to do, so the game's going to be
sweet.
Longer than the first game was.
Yeah,
well, the first game was kind of short anyway.
It was, yeah. You could beat it in under 15 hours pretty easily.
It felt just right though for a South Park
They
experience.
definitely mentioned it.
I thought they nailed that.
Yeah, they said north of 20 hours for this one. They also mentioned there's going to be DLC.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But the most interesting thing about this trip for me is just how much they're bracing for a long-term relationship with Matt and Trey, it is just one of the most interesting stories in the industry for me, because I love South Park and I love, game production, and just seeing how they try and blend these two, and the idea of this studio bracing for a long-term relationship by using the same engine that made The Division, Snowdrop engine, which is just bizarre, but they use that engine so they can import the Maya assets, the animation assets, directly from South Park Studios. Mm-hmm. So they spent a year of hell, as they put it, trying to get Snowdrop up and running to make it work with South Park, as they put it, basically just going into the engine of the car and ripping out parts they didn't need anymore. Like,
turning off the online stuff. They had to, like, reprogram it so that you could pause the game, because Division doesn't have a pause.
Right, just silly little
You're just
thing.
like, that's such a weird thing to even think about.
Yeah, but the idea of just getting Ubisoft muscle and, like, all of Ubisoft just ready to go for the whims of Matt and Trey. Like, well, we're making this game. Let's hope it goes well so that we can keep making South Park games, because Stick of Truth sold so well. Like, it's a profitable venture. Mm-hmm. But it's so bizarre to hinge all Ubisoft muscle onto, boy, Matt and Trey, the auteurs, amazing geniuses. But, like, if they don't feel like making another game,
they're not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
What if they get halfway through and they're like, you know what, we were wrong. We just don't want to do this.
Yeah, who the hell knows? And so how do you, like, put those two systems together? It's insane to me.
It was just interesting too, because it was at E3 that they got up on stage and they're like, yeah, well, coming out later this year. At the time they were thinking, and so I guess we should probably write this game. It's just like jokes like that where you're like, wait a minute, what?
Meanwhile, Ubisoft CEOs are, like, panicking and, like,
they're laughing with tears.
Yeah,
right. Like, it's a complicated relationship to get into, but it's fun to see Ubisoft, in theory, bracing for the long term, so that whenever Matt and Trey want to make a game, they can come back home to the Rocksmith studio and they'll be ready to go. Fascinating to hear their perspective on working with Matt and Trey. Like, Jason, the producer, had a good line where he's talking about, like, every once in a while Trey would call up and then he would just open his line or his dialogue with, how much would you guys be bummed out if? And then the entire team's just like, oh no, just like
what's
racing.
What's coming?
Right. If we just kind of scrap that area.
To their credit, though, they also said that, like, Matt and Trey both have this, like, pretty good, like, design sense or natural.
They learned a lot on Stick of Truth.
Of, like, like, what's going to work in a game and what's not, and, like, they'll have things that they walk away from a meeting, like Jason said, that they'll come back a week later and he's like, I got to tell these guys that it's not working, and they'll jump on the phone and Matt's like, so this isn't going to work, we realized. And, like, it's like, they get it before we even have to tell them. And so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how this cover story was treated compared to Stick of Truth. Because over 5 years ago, or whenever the hell that was, I went to Obsidian, and it was a completely different publisher, different studio, different GI team. It was Dan and Brian I went with. Yep. And so I feel like this weird holdover from that previous era. And it's funny to, like, compare the talking points of the different studios, because Obsidian was very much like all that other South Park stuff, all the other games, not real South Park stuff. Matt and Trey are with us every step of the way, every creative decision. And now with this meeting, it's like, look, Stick of Truth is great, but Matt and Trey could have been more involved this time. Matt and Trey are in every creative decision. It's like, okay, that was the exact talking point from last time.
Even the animators were like, it looks even more like the show than last time. And you're like, man, if you ask the average guy on the street, they're like, that looked exactly like, Stick of Truth looked exactly like an episode. So it's like, there's maybe like minute upgrades that most people aren't going to notice. But I mean, the game still looked great. One thing I will notice just on that front is like load times are way, way quicker. Just like, because the way they built it in The Division, I don't know if you remember Stick of Truth, you would walk into a house and it would take a while to load up.
For sure. Even going to combat, like on consoles, it was like, hey, lightning bolts for a long time before it finally boots into the actual
So that's kind
combat
of nice.
scene.
It's one of those things that, like, looking back, I don't really remember the load times, but they were annoying.
But on that animation front, one of the more interesting little stories to come out of the studio, and Reiner, tell us when we're talking about South Park too much.
No, I was just reflecting in my mind on the month of hell I had setting up that first cover.
Oh, sure.
Andy was out of the office. He was down and out at the hospital for a month. Yeah, he had surgery. Gave his brother his kidney. You know,
that was around
one of his
then,
kidneys.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was setting up this whole cover. Found it. I think I still have the prototype footage of the game on my computer, which no one's ever seen.
But instead of the word douchebag, you were called something else very offensive in that early take on Stick of Truth.
That wasn't me. That was Dan Reichert.
No. In the game.
Like Cartman. What Cartman
Oh,
says
yes.
to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine if they stuck with that.
I won't go too much into it. There's a lot of story I don't want to tell, but at one point, our cover art in me setting this up was a naked Cartman on the front of the cover, fully naked Cartman, and then the back of the cover was like cut out outfits for him that you could
Which is a really great idea.
That's
I loved
really
it
good
so
I think
much.
we still have that art somewhere too. But like there was a bunch of different covers that didn't work, and it was like chaos getting that cover together. Even on Matt and Trey's end, they were on, they were off. They were on, they were off. Like you guys were flying out, then seconds later the flight was canceled. Then you were flying out again.
That took a lot of THQ strong arm to make that happen.
Yeah,
back
THQ.
Then,
Danny Bilson drove to South Park Studios to talk to them in person, and
It's like, this game is going to save our company.
and then the game turned out great.
The game
was not
turned out great.
Long story short,
Not for them.
the game was great. They knocked it out of the park. They're geniuses, and can't wait to play this one.
Yeah, but the animator, little side story at the studio is one of the lead animators on the game worked on the show for like 6 years. And now he went over to Ubisoft to help out. And he gave some really fascinating examples, if you're an animation nerd, about like South Park animation done right and South Park animation done wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Where he just would show like these comparing clips, A and B. And it's like you look at one and say, yeah, that looks fine. That looks like animated South Park. Then you see like, and this is in the very specific South Park style. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, now it's night and day. I see exactly
like once you see it, you're like, yep, that's definitely South Park animation.
And a lot of
like a little bit cruder, kind of like
a little bit stiffer,
stop motiony.
Right, yeah. But then just talking about like Matt and Trey, they just know this style inside and out. They have very tiny requests, which is totally fair. It's their baby.
Yeah.
About like characters, their necks cannot be bent this much. You need to do it in this certain way. But like when you develop the look of that show, it's so hard to convert it into games, and they seem to be doing it again. And it's great.
It
to
is
see.
like talking to that animator. It became apparent very quickly that it is deceptively simple. Like you think that's just like 2D. Just make like a 2D game, but it's like, oh, there's a lot more happening here than I ever realized. You know,
even just to get technical for a little bit, even just like the background art, where it's like, oh, it's all just painted on. What's the big deal? But no, every object, because it is literally rendered in the computer as if it is cardboard cutouts, like the actual show. And so like every different color you see, like say there's like a coffee mug, and and like if you do a drawing of it, there'll be like the circle part on the top that's a slightly different color, showing like the inside of the coffee cup. That is a different layer. And so in the computer, that's rendered as a different layer. And so like if you rotate the camera, it is
just like pieces of paper layered on top.
It's just infinite. It is mind-boggling.
Which just means there's so much to load up.
Right.
And like why animated in a game is actually way harder than you would think it would be.
Yeah, for sure. And they have, again, like Ubisoft Muscle, there's like, I think they said the team is 3 times as big as Styx, roughly. They have 140 people working on it. Ubisoft Osaka is working on it, which is interesting because they're the studio that made the Gravity Falls 3DS game, which was also cel-shaded. So they have a little expertise in that arena.
You guys know what you're doing. Okay, bye.
Yeah, work on it, Japan. Yeah, I am fascinated by the production of this game. Where do you guys stand on combat?
I was wondering we were going to get to that because I was like, I think we walked out of the meeting and we were like, the one sticking point is, first up, it doesn't look bad. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. But going back to stick, like, I don't know, that combat worked for me. I kind of liked that simple, like, turn-based attack button thing. Now I like XCOM style combat where you have a grid and you move around things, and it seems like they're kind of going for that a little bit, kind of more of a strategy type thing,
or
where you
Final
move
Fantasy
around a
Tactics.
grid. Yeah, a little bit like a simplified grid. So it's not quite as complex, but there is cover. There are like elements that you can push enemies into and do extra damage, stuff like that. And your characters move around the field, and all their attacks have a different shape, so you might be able to hit different characters on a spread, or like maybe a cross shaped out from the character. So it's interesting, like, depth of strategy. I'm just like a little nervous. Is that all going to come together as much as I want it to and be as fun as something like a deep strategy game like XCOM? And I'm worried it might not.
You're not learning new moves. You're just mixing and matching from different classes, which I guess is effectively the same, but might feel a little bit like there's less progression maybe from Stick of Truth. But what I worry about is it's such a weird dichotomy for the studio, because a big talking point was, we want to make this game for South Park fans, not just RPG fans. Like, you don't need to be an RPG expert to play this game. Like, if you like South Park the show, you should be able to play this game.
That's the right call, in my opinion.
Yeah, but they said they had plenty of anecdotes of people who were big South Park fans would try and play Stick of Truth and be like, what is a timing-based combat? Like, what are all these systems, status effects? What is this nonsense? So on one hand, they're saying they're trying to streamline it and simplify the game. Then the other hand, I think because Matt and Trey are fans of like board games, specifically Trey, like the combat is more tactics-based, which I would consider to be more of a turnoff for casual people. But the argument on the other side of that is, well, no, because you're fighting in the actual places and you can actually move around the combat space, so it's more intuitive. You don't have to be an RPG nut to appreciate what you can do.
There still is that timing button press, though, if like you hit the button at the right time, you do extra damage. So it's like, it's not like it's more simplified in that sense.
They kind of said they were trying to find a middle ground between Trey and Matt, because Trey's like a board game guy, likes tactics games, loves getting into strategy, and then Matt's more of like the action shooter guy. So like they kind of described it as like they were working on these things with the two guys, and Trey was kind of pushing like, oh, more strategy, and then Matt would kind of be like, oh, well, but I can still have like my action moments, right? And I don't know, we'll see if it does ultimately find that middle ground. Like I'm a little turned off from it, but I also don't really enjoy tactics just in general.
It's interesting
I'm with you.
That the superhero game, which you would think in concept would call for more of an action focus, is actually going more RPG, slower, turn-based, grid-based.
But in theory, because you can walk around, it is slightly more action-focused than just Paper Mario style standing still.
Yeah, you're not like selecting, okay, let's move 2 spots. You're actively walking over there, which is kind of cool. Like in that, ideally, it could make the combat feel like it's moving more consistently, but it's still RPG.
And moving those characters in South Park games just feels so satisfying.
It's always
watching them waddle over
bounce.
there.
2 frames down, 2 frames up. But I'm not worried about it when it comes to like set piece comedy, big like boss battles and stuff like that. But where I just worry about it is like getting into random combat around town. You know, where the equivalent of like the Nazi zombies and Stick of Truth. It's like, oh, I just got to take out these folks or take out these elves for a while. Like having to go into those battles again and again. It's like, okay, back to this tactics map so I can shoehorn my way through it. Like I think they can do set piece combat really well with this format, but I just worry like, okay, this is going to take longer naturally because it's tactics.
The random battles, we got into a random battle during our playthrough and it was like, this is kind of taking a long time for just a random battle.
So, it's a tough pacing issue, and I hope they can nail it.
5 to 10 minutes, I think, the average battle would be,
which
significant. Is a little bit longer than most RPGs, I think. So, I don't know. That turned me off a little bit, too, because as much as I like games like XCOM, like you sit down for a game of XCOM and you know what you're getting into. But if you're going into an RPG and it's full of random battles, you don't want that big, long battle each time.
Right. So outside of combat, though, I was really impressed by everything I saw in the game. I think it all looks really good. Like
it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, they're bringing back mini games. Like we saw one where like you're working with Scott Malkinson, who's the kid who has diabetes on the show. He's only been in a couple episodes. I noticed in this season they tease that they might be building up more of a storyline.
Sort of using him more, I think, on purpose.
Maybe because of the game.
Yeah, it seems like you spend a lot of time with him at least early in the game.
Right. He's Professor Diabetes?
Captain Diabetes.
Captain Diabetes, of course.
His power is he can spike his blood sugar and he becomes super strong.
It's basically
like
the Hulk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he has diabetes because as his mom was giving birth to him, she farted on his face.
That's right.
That's the lore that they went with. Yeah, it is. Oh, anyways. Oh, so the mini game is you go into the strip club with Scott,
That's right.
and they're like trying to get information out of these guys because they're trying to figure out who has a connection to Netflix. It's a long story. Anyways, and so trying to get information out of these guys, so they're like acting as if they're strippers, and it's just like businessmen in the back, and there's like a mini game to do a lap dance like on these businessmen's face.
That was actually going to be, you talked about what's your funniest moment from the game. That was going to be mine, but it's kind of hard to convey because a lot of that humor is visual.
Yeah.
It's like just watching these two kids lap dance on these like, kids' laps.
And I love like they said like, hey, you can see our music game roots coming through here through this mini game of giving a lap dance to a businessman. But also, I mean, they've been teasing a lot. There's going to be the Kanye West Gay Fish mini game.
It's the unknown things that they won't tell us before. Like the unknown qualities that were in Stick of Truth. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that got through.
I can't believe, but even like something that's not that offensive, but just so awesome, like the Canada sequence.
Yeah.
And they mentioned
things like that are awesome.
Yeah. And they mentioned there's going to be art style shifts in this game, not Canada again.
Right.
I want to retread that ground, but something in that
there
vein.
Could be a big tease like that, which they were kind of vague on what that is, which I honestly didn't even want to know because Canada was such a cool surprise in the last game.
It's so good. Something really bizarre is, and I just know this because I was on that last cover story trip for Stick of Truth, but they showed concept art. It's even in the magazine for Stick of Truth of like a Christmas Town world and going underground with the crab people.
Yeah.
And now this time around they're saying, by the way, and this one ended up in Stick of Truth at all. And now this time around, they're like, yeah, there's Christmas Town in this game, and crab people are a faction. Unclear if it's like you go to their world, but it's interesting that like those remnants that didn't quite make it into Stick of Truth are still carrying forward, even with a completely different
studio.
Even though
it's a different studio.
But apparently something in that Christmas Town is such a good idea that they're going to bring it back around this time. So
maybe they won't now that the game's delayed.
Yeah, who knows?
Out of December, right?
Yep, early next year.
Yeah, partly factored in because of season 20 was building up, ramping into production, and also they just say like, we want time to polish this baby.
That's great.
As they put
polish it up.
Yeah, they say they're feeling confident it's going to be the funniest game ever made. It stands a real shot. I'm excited to see their sophomore effort.
And its competition is the game before it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Which is so good. Hey.
Hi.
Gears of War 4.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something other than South Park. Oh, by the way, we should mention entire month of features going into more detail.
Yeah, I guess so.
GameInformer.com/South Park Fractured.
Some cool videos.
Yeah, great stuff. Gears of War 4, Rainer. I don't know what you think about this. I don't know your score. I don't know anything. Please, just start.
I don't either, actually. I just played it 5 minutes and put some words on a doc and called it a review.
That's great information to get out there.
Hey, Joe, gussy this up, would you?
What did you give it?
9.
Holy cow.
Point.
What?
2.
What?
5.
2.9?
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's a
I
high
didn't know
score.
you liked it that much. What pushed it over the top for you?
It is really fun, Ben Hansen. It's a charming,
hilarious
game.
Little romp.
So no, you know what's interesting? That was a dumb joke, but it actually kind of speaks to the beginning of the game where all along they've been painting this Gears of War 4 new developer, new heroes, new enemies. The Swarm, JD Phoenix. The Coalition developing new weapons. They're really kind of trying to create a new saga for Gears of War. And that begins, and it's very colorful. And there's a point in the game where JD Phoenix and Kate and Val, the three main characters, are on this beautiful...
Wait a minute. Val?
Yeah.
Del?
Or Del, sorry.
Okay.
The three main characters are on this sunny hillside. It's very colorful, green... Very different than what you saw in the
Are the
other
characters,
games.
are they like blinded, like they're coming outside with
they're
like, what are these colors?
It's like a Disney movie. It's like...
Is Stallone in it? Is it?
But there's a point where they find a cocoon and Kate's talking about it and she's like looking at it. She's like, caterpillar's ugly and, kind of challenging life up to this point. And then it emerges as something more dynamic and beautiful. And I was just kind of like, holy crap, that's a biting commentary about this series of... the grays and browns of old. I think they're kind of going into that where they're trying something different here.
There's also cocoons throughout the rest of the game as little pods, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where they go too. So it's like the whole first act of the game is like you are taking on cog robots. There isn't any living enemies at this point, and it's
weird.
You are taking on like a whole robotic army, and your character JD is very much like more the DNA of Nathan Drake than anybody from the previous games. The whole dude bro thing is gone. It is more of a kind of snarky, funny take on it.
Sincerely funny or just trying to be funny?
Yeah, no, it is actually. I even talked to Matt Miller about this, who's just started playing. I was like, that dialogue's pretty good, right? And he's like, yeah, it's actually really kind of funny, and I like where it's going. Well, it stays that way for about 2 acts. And then you run into Marcus Phoenix.
Uh-huh.
And it becomes kind of a reunion game. I won't go into what that means necessarily, but from there on in, it is very much like retreading familiar territory for Gears of War. And that's not a bad thing, mind you. It's just, wow, they really went for it in creating something new and then kind of retreated to the past for the remainder of the game.
You would think kind of the first game from a new studio would have the opposite structure.
Yeah, you think it'd go the other way. But no, it's very much like Force Awakens, actually, where, hey, here's some new characters, and oh, here's all the other guys. That's kind of like where that movie went.
Uh-huh.
They do the kind of the same thing, but even more so. And by the end of the game, you're like, okay, we're back at like kind of square one for Gears of War. And again, that's not bad because they do a really great job with the combat, the scenarios, the set piece moments, the characters, the weapons. The new weapons are a lot of fun. That whole campaign, which you could play cooperatively, you could do it online or locally, which is very cool.
Cross-platform, PC, Xbox One.
And
future rules.
The second player can be either character, the first JD, but it's super fun, and there's not much to complain about in that campaign other than like, oh, we're going here again.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Like I was really into like this whole new thing they set up, and it's almost got like a Robin Hood vibe at the beginning, where JD his crew is living on the outskirts of town. They're not playing by COG rules. They're outsiders. They're breaking into the city to steal something, so it's like, okay, this is very cool. I like this whole world they've set up, this whole dynamic of like these small civilizations outside of these really protected cities.
So what do they get out of going back to the old well so much by the end of the game? Like, what's the plus side of that?
It's fan service. It's just like Star Wars, right? Like, oh yeah, Chewbacca's back. R2-D2,
hey,
he's no longer
Chewbacca?
under a sheet. He's alive again.
Yeah.
Well, but it is a continuation of Marcus's sort of narrative, right? I mean, the Star Wars characters weren't there for no reason. I mean, we wanted to see
what's
happening
JD's
with
narrative
Han.
now.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, it is very much their story. And that stays true through the whole game. And again, I don't want to go into specifics, but this is a campaign. If you do like cool video game stories and campaigns, this is one you should play.
Okay.
All right.
But, they do a pretty good job of kind of, if you haven't played a Gears game before, of kind of telling you what happened. The prologue of the game goes through all the wars, the Pendulum War, 2 years before E-Day, and then 17 years after, where you see it all end. So you get a full picture of what happened in this series.
At one time, we made Gears of War Judgment. They tell the full story.
They leave that out. But yeah, you get a nice little build up there, and it's really artfully done. And the first part of that, the Pendulum Wars and the prologue, feels like, I was like, this game doesn't look good. This looks like an Xbox 360 game. And that's intentional on their part, I think. Like, the visuals build up in each of those little prologue chapters.
Really?
So it's
and the scale, too, of the enemies you're taking on and what you're doing. And by the end, it's like, you see like these new weather effects and all this of the new game. And it's like, holy crap, like this looks really good now.
Wait a minute. You're playing through?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
you play through all these little
really
wrinkles in the history of Gears. And then, it kind of hits present day, which is 25 years after the events of the last game.
So the
or something like
prequel
that.
stuff to Gears feels like a Xbox One game or something, kind of?
Xbox 360 game. Yeah,
Well, it debuted on 360.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we confused on the Xbox One thing? Are we talking about different things?
I meant the original.
Right.
That
of
was on
course.
360. Yeah.
But yeah, I was curious about the weather effects, though, because that seemed like a big set piece stuff they were going for.
It's a big part of the lore more than set piece moments where, there's cool times where the wind is really howling, and I won't go into what happens in this world too much. That's part of the story buildup, but there are these storms that, from the events of what happened in the previous games, these storms are kind of destroying the world. That's a big thing, and man's had to learn how to live with these torrid storms.
Yeah.
And you will have battles where the wind is howling, like 100-mile-an-hour winds, and if you free a metal beam from its casing, the thing's going to go ripping across the terrain. So you could use that to take down enemies, which is cool. But it is very limited. Yes, maybe you have 4 instances where the weather is howling and it's in the gameplay, but it doesn't last long. It's more of the traditional, tried and true Gears of War gameplay: pop and shoot.
Cool.
Chainsaw, using your weapons.
Horde mode's good. Multiplayer's good.
Horde mode is awesome. You can now move your base wherever you want. 5 players. Versus mode, the new dodgeball game, which I won't even try to describe. Just look at the review. It isn't dodgeball. There's no ball. Is
You
cool.
hit me in the head. It doesn't count.
Arms race is awesome though, and that is basically everybody starts with the same weapon. 2 teams. Everybody can only use 1 weapon. First team collectively as a team that gets 3 kills gets a new weapon. So each time it'll switch. And that mode actually teaches you and forces you to use different weapons. Yeah. I'm one of those players in multiplayer games where I'm always using the same weapon. And I like that. But this I really appreciate because it's fun. And it gets to a point where it's like, oh, I got a sniper rifle. I'm terrible with this.
Right.
Your entire team struggles and the other team has like a machine gun going against you. They can kind of climb back up. So yeah, it is a lot of fun. Very different. And then there's like a experience thing where you're gaining cards, opening packs of cards. It's not like Halo where the cards are burned after 1 use. Any card you get, you just keep, and then you can kind of level them up as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff there in terms of depth. And yeah, it's a great game. 9.25. You should play it. Xbox One, PC.
Yeah.
Out next Tuesday, or if you want to spend $100, play it early. Get
all
all the downloadable stuff and extra cards and all that this Friday.
Reeves, do you want to play through this? Because we played through the original before we went on the cover story trip. Do you want to revive that?
I am kind of excited to play it now, especially like just hearing you talk about the opening sequence. I'm like, that sounds interesting and weird for a Gears game.
It's very cool.
We should get together while my house is still warm.
We should hang out.
That's right. For once a year.
That's right. Gears Day.
It's time finally.
Once every couple of years.
Well, hey, once every couple of years, PlayStation tries to swing big with some new hardware. We had 3D
what a
TVs. We had Sony Move. Let's see. We had the little PlayStation VMU thing that you could play Crash Bandicoot on.
The 3D TV, man. We're still using those.
Yeah, we had the Xperia Play. Now we have
the Harry Potter book.
Wonder Book. Don't get me started. Man. We had the light gun sharpshooter. Now we have PlayStation VR. Tell me, at what tier is it in Sony's arsenal of hardware rollouts?
Oh, interesting.
It's pretty high, I think. I think it's
Vita?
I think it's more not above Vita. Are we gonna consider that like a peripheral? I don't know what that is.
Some people consider that pretty low.
I love the Vita. I think Vita's great. But in terms of like Move and stuff like that, I think VR is very high.
So you've been playing a lot of it, Kyle.
I've been playing a lot. I'm still a little nauseated from the stream this morning. I think.
We were trying to get him to puke.
Yeah.
Intentionally?
Yeah. I wanted him to vomit.
We didn't
Just have him look in the mirror.
We didn't play. No, well, that was Reiner played Batman. So in Batman, you look in the mirror.
I haven't talked to you much about it. I hear like the most common phrase in the office over the last week or so since we've had
is
the PSVR.
Where's Kyle? He's at home playing VR.
Well, that's actually number one. Then number 2 is, man, I don't know if I can play that game anymore. It's making me sick. This seems like the most nauseating VR helmet by a mile, right?
Is. Yeah.
What is going on with that?
It's I think it's because unlike Vive and Oculus, which like literally rest against your face and obscures all light from entering, there's a gap on the PlayStation VR that lets in light, and you still have a little bit of peripheral vision, and like if you're playing with the Move controllers, like and you're kind of moving them around, you can even sometimes see the light coming up through there, and it will reflect on the lens. And I think
this sounds bad.
Do you think if you just play in a completely dark room, that would help?
It does help. Yeah. That's like it doesn't like break the experience. It doesn't totally ruin it, but it does. It's impossible to ignore. And for that reason, it is compared to Oculus and Vive, it is like the worst, I guess you could say, or the least good.
We can say worst.
Yeah. But that being said, it is still like a legitimate virtual reality experience. Like I think it is competitive with Vive and Oculus
and pricing.
Yeah, it is cheaper. Yeah. So and then that's kind of in my review, I kind of compare it to like the sort of the way that we talk about like PC gaming versus console gaming in general. Like PlayStation VR is not technically as good as those other two, but it has an ease of use. It's a lower price. Like it's much easier to set up. It's easier to get into the games. It works more consistently. Well, you can turn it on, Mark.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I should take back that. Maybe it doesn't work as consistently because they're all about the same level of like you lose the signal in Vive. Sometimes your controllers won't be
Right.
seen by the camera and stuff. Like
Okay.
that.
But the one nice thing is like when Vive and Oculus came out, I was like, I'm gonna have to upgrade my PC a lot if I
Yeah.
want to buy one of these. But like with this, it's like I have a PS4.
That's all you need.
Yeah, all I need, I need a PlayStation camera and a Move controller, and that's it. Like that's
Yeah.
the only thing I would have to upgrade.
There's a lot of experiences that you don't even need the Move controller for, even. So,
How much is it?
so I think
$4.99
Yeah,
for the bundle, which comes with 2 Move controllers,
and a camera
camera,
and PlayStation Worlds, which is like a game.
game, demo disc, and the headset.
Is there any universe where it's worth that money?
Or 3.
I think so. I think it's tough to say because it's like that's if you have a PS4 and you're like sort of fascinated by VR and you want to try it out, like that's a great way to go. Like if you don't want to upgrade a PC or if you don't want to dedicate a room to Vive, like I think PlayStation VR is like I said, it's a legitimate VR experience, and you will get VR experiences from. This
Well, what are
package.
the experiences you should have? then?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are you actually doing? What's the highlight of the software so far?
So a couple of my favorites. I like.
I'm going to put an asterisk on this before you answer.
Okay.
Is Sony has and other publishers have provided a quarter of the launch games at this point.
Okay.
Yes, we haven't played.
So we have
everything.
only played like 25% of what is there roughly.
Gotcha.
So yeah, temper that. Like of what we've played, these are the ones.
So Batman VR, which we played through on our stream, if you go watch the archive, you can actually see the full game, is very cool. It's short, but like you get a sense that you are there's a couple of sequences where you really kind of feel like you're standing in Gotham or you're standing in the Batcave or you're standing in Wayne Manor.
Emphasize standing.
Yeah, you stand
Well,
in
this
one
sounds
place
like
long.
that Lucasfilm Star Wars VR thing that I think we talked about on the podcast a little bit, where it's like, technically it feels like you're standing on Tatooine.
Yeah.
But is that enough of a thrill?
It's the proof of concept is there more so than the Star Wars one, where you do want more of this experience. You want a longer narrative. You want them to kind of go in that Telltale way of creating a adventure game in Arkham, right? Like Rocksteady, please make this series. Like,
Yeah.
it is cool, and I liked what I did in the game, and they did a good job of changing up the gameplay enough where you were doing different interactions all the way through it.
Yeah,
But a lot of time you're just watching it as Batman just standing there.
Okay.
But there's a sequence like when you're doing the detective stuff is where the game really shines. Like there's a scene where you're kind of investigating a death of an important character in case people don't want it to be spoiled. And
But this is canon with the Arkham series.
yeah.
Jesus. Okay.
And
Well,
like you're in this Gotham alley, which is like I think literally a environment from Arkham Knight. I could be wrong about that, and if I am, then they did a good job making it feel like it belongs there. And you kind of do that thing where you make a 3D sort of render of the crime scene, and you can kind of walk around and look at it and isolate specific moments that happen and scan them and stuff like that, which is very cool. Like you're basically setting.
Again, you're not walking though.
You're not walking. You're standing there
You're warping
viewing,
to points to view as a stationary Batman.
Yeah, and you're watching a fight unfold and sort of analyzing it up close. And then there's a sequence where you're in the morgue and you're scanning these bodies looking for clues. And you guys remember that scene in Dark Knight, the Nolan Dark Knight, where he has to like reconstruct a bullet in order to find out its like source?
Right.
You basically do that in the game by like using the move controllers to grab objects and reconstruct them to find like the serial number on a bullet, to which leads you to the next point. And that stuff's really cool. Like I liked that stuff a lot.
And you said it's like a half an hour.
Yeah, it's like I don't know,
40 to
45
an
minutes.
hour,
and
maybe,
then after you play through it once, they inject Riddler trophies all over the place.
And
So you
Riddler,
can play through it
Riddler
again.
puzzles, actually.
Yeah,
Is
like
this like an episode 1 thing, or is this like the whole thing?
This is it.
Like,
this is it, yeah.
Okay.
There's
They've
a
kinda
beginning, middle,
doubled-
and end to it.
Yeah, Rocksteady's kind of doubled down. Like, this is it for them with Batman.
Yeah.
What a weird way to go out.
Yeah, and it's neat, though. I mean, it really is. It feels like a Disney exhibit or a Disney ride where you're like, oh, that was cool. I felt like I kind of went someplace and did
Okay.
something.
And speaking of Disney rides, the other game that I enjoyed a lot was Until Dawn.
Rush of blood to the head.
We'll just Rush of Blood.
Okay.
Which doesn't really connect to last year's game. Like they mention the two siblings that died in the beginning of the game and their brother Josh a little bit, and you see some of the characters and locations from that game. But really, it's just like you're sitting in a roller coaster and you're kind of going along this track and you're shooting things. It's basically like the evolution of like a light gun game.
Okay.
But it's it's cool. Like using the move controllers works really well. You can aim really well, and there's a lot of really messed up sequences that happen, and you go through a lot of really weird stuff. It gets really. Yeah, you're on a roller coaster.
Do you feel like you're?
Oh yeah, it would make me ill. Like it made me nauseated. At times.
We had him standing on the roller coaster.
Yeah. You want to sit to play that game.
That'd be weird. So is there story stuff too? Like, is there a branching narrative or anything?
No, does not have any kind of branching narrative. There's like these little prologues where this guy kind of talks to you before each level. And you kind of get this. I got the sense that you were like, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you fit into the Until Dawn universe. But you went to see you're going to see like a doctor or a therapist, and you're sort of imagining.
Okay.
Time to take this roller coaster to my therapist.
Have you played Until Dawn? It really is not out
the beginning.
It's really not out of like character for that game.
It's just funny that you get on a roller coaster to do that.
Well,
it's all an emotional roller coaster.
But man, it's just like really fun because you can kind of look in multiple directions and shoot in opposite directions. So you can be like people will be running at you from multiple directions. You got to switch back and forth, and you can even I think in the stream I did it. Like there were times where people were coming at me from like really opposite ends, and I was just like firing at them.
Doing the Han Solo in Force Awakens, just
pretty
shooting
much
behind your back.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And it's cool. There's a lot of cool sequences that happen in that game.
And it was like a level was like 15 minutes, and it seemed like there was a bunch. There was like
there's 7 of them.
7, yeah. So there's some game there.
That was one of the more substantial experiences. Okay. Yeah. And then Jeff Cork reviewed Thumper. Jeff Cork did not care for Thumper. He gave
575 didn't care for it.
575. I'm kind of on the other end of that. I think Thumper is really awesome. It's like a former harmonics people, and it's a really fast-paced rhythm game where you're kind of on a track, and it almost has this. The soundtrack is very percussive and driving, and
aggressive.
It's super intense, and it gets really fast, and then every level has these kind of like boss battles where you're fighting these giant like Star Fox Andross style faces, and like one thing that VR does really well is like giant things invading your space. So that game was really cool.
So it's
like
a shooter, you're saying?
It's more of a rhythm game.
I read it wasn't very good.
Yeah, I think Jeff Cork gave it a 575.
Look up video, make up your own mind.
Yeah, there's actually a good point about Thumper is like if you get into PSVR, whatever bundle you get, it comes with a demo disc, which has a lot of great stuff on it. And one of those games is Thumper, so you can play the first level and see if it does it for you.
Yeah,
the full Res Evil 7 kitchen demo is on that disc.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. I haven't played that yet.
Yeah, Res is on there as well. Res is cool.
Res looks really cool.
I like Res in VR a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of sort of recommending it to people that want a limited VR experience for $500.
Well, going back to your original question.
Yeah.
In any universe, is that worth it? We don't know yet. Like we'll have a better idea next week after we've played all the demo discs. But right now, it seems like developers are very timid in how much they're kind of the support they're pledging, and it's a lot of proof of concept stuff like that Batman experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of tepid in general on VR. Like nothing in VR has really gotten me really excited and being like, this is something I need in my house. Like even spending like almost a week with PlayStation VR, it's not one that I think I want to purchase, but I mean, it's true. Like but I also am in a position where
reality.
I'm also in a position where I have one at work that I can go try, which is like not for most people, but for what Sony wants to do, which is like deliver a virtual reality experience that plugs into your console. I think it works, and it works pretty well.
Except it makes you sick every time you play it.
Not every time. Certain games. It comes down to the games too. Like Thumper is very fast, but does not make me sick. But then there was I believe it's called Scavenger's Odyssey. I could be wrong about that. On the PlayStation Worlds game, which by the way, PlayStation Worlds is a collection of like tech demos. Scavenger's Odyssey is like try that game at your own risk because it immediately like made my stomach turn over. Like it was bad.
What was the game we played today? Like I got really excited watching a horror game that we were playing. It was like a walking simulator.
Here They Lie.
That looked really cool.
I
want to see more of that. That was just a demo, but wow.
It was Sony Santa Monica, and you're basically walking through these you're just walking straight through these sort of underground creepy subway things and subway things. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, that's official. Tunnels. You can call them tunnels or things.
And stuff is just getting weird and warped, and like there were like these giant like puddles of blood and giant creatures walking out of them, and like some dude in a pig mask killed me because I guess I went into his house when I wasn't supposed to.
It looked creepy and different and cool, and it was like kind of Sin City where it was black and white and then red at times.
Yeah,
red all over.
I like it. I
Like
like
a newspaper.
That's right.
I like to see a demo disc coming back too. It's a
Yeah.
fun callback to PS1, PlayStation Underground era.
I was really smart on their part because there's like 9 games on there or something, and it's also really good for VR if it makes you nauseated. Those demos are pretty quick.
Find out which one will make you puke. Have a good time, everybody.
Eve Valkyrie will probably do that for you. So,
that one got to me even on
that
Oculus.
one's on there. Yeah.
The big question is going to be Res Evil next year because that is like the first legit AAA big series coming to VR. Play the whole game that way, but is this going to be the answer where it's a hybrid game where you could play it without VR or with it?
You can play it without. They've said that you can play it without VR or with VR, right?
That's what I'm saying though.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Right.
is that the answer for AAA games coming to VR?
they
It's
make-
just split the design
draw the
sense
line.
down the middle,
Gotcha.
I guess.
That's the stuff I'm curious about. Like, I won't know until I play it, but I feel like I want to play more big AAA type projects. I don't want these like little like side stories. Like,
there's no market for
card
it, but come
shooters.
on, put
Well,
70 million into it. Let's go.
but yeah, like I want to play a God of War or something on this. And
Right.
like, I think
Yeah.
that would be fun.
Or like a full Arkham game. Like that Arkham experience was
Yeah.
like very brief, but it was like I would love to be a detective, like looking at trying to solve little puzzles in a room and stuff.
do you guys
like that.
think the market's going to get to that point?
Would
I
it
mean,
be
outside of
super
Facebook
hard
money,
to like port it.
yes.
Okay.
Well, it's been really hard to get Vive and Oculus right now. There's no stores that really sell them. PlayStation VR is going to be the first one that is sitting on store shelves in Walmart's, Targets, GameStops. Like it'll be there, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the first true consumer test, I think, outside
Yeah.
of hardcore gamers that are in the know going to Oculus's website and buying it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's just
I mean,
weird because like those add-on peripheral things like almost never do well. Like even when it's cool technology, like
Connect did really well.
Super
Did it
Scope
do well,
6.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. You kidding me?
Connect is one of the
But
most
did it?
successful like
It's
peripherals
like
of all time. or
Yeah,
something
11
like that.
million out of the
Yeah.
gate or something
All
like
right.
It holds
I
some
stand
kind of Guinness
corrected.
record.
Yeah.
there you go.
Multi-tap on PS1 was huge.
Boo.
that. Guinness record only successful
Those-
peripheral in gaming history.
Those those Wii remote tennis rackets. People bought a lot of
The
those.
Connect Raft. I mean, don't even get me started on these
Oh
peripherals.
wow, everybody had one of those.
Some of the
But to
Amigo-
answer your question, Hanson, no.
no one should buy it.
No one. You were asking about AAA experience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Correct. Cool. Reeves, let's move on to something more lighthearted than puking. Something.
South Park.
That's right.
Back to South Park.
Well, I would argue Stick of Truth is the third best Paper Mario game of all time. Where does Color Splash land on your scale?
Interesting. So what's the second most?
Paper Mario and Thousand Year Door.
Oh, interesting. In that order.
I think so. I think
Okay.
so. The more I think about it.
I liked Color Splash a lot. I don't know if it's a weird comparison to make with South Park, so I don't know if I want to rank it in that order. But if you like the Paper Mario games, you're gonna like Color Splash a lot.
I disagree.
If you wait, really?
Yeah.
Why?
I'll keep going. Keep going.
Okay. Well, if you liked, how about this? If you liked Sticker Star,
Yes.
you're going to like Color Splash because it's definitely like I talk about this in my review. It's not RPG-ish anymore. They've definitely like steered away from that. You still have the turn-based like timed attack battles, but there's no leveling up. There's no like inventory that you equip or anything like that. Your only inventory is your like list of cards, which function as your attacks, and those are something you collect and a finite resource. And I know that kind of bugged people the wrong way with Sticker Star because you were collecting stickers, which were your attacks. So it's the same system. So if that didn't bug you, then you'll love Color Splash.
Did you like Sticker Star?
I liked it. I think here's the thing. Like we have the Mario and Luigi games, which are like RPG Mario games.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with Paper Mario not being the RPG anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. I
So
hear
I'm
you.
like, I actually like the idea of like having a finite resource of like attacks and like how you use them and like being smart about like which moves you're going to use for this enemy so that you don't run out of attacks. And even if you do run out of attacks, you can like pay 10 coins and get a new card. And I had like maxed out my coins like a third of the way through the game. So that's not really an issue. Like you're never going to like end up in a battle and like, well, I can't win this because I don't have cards. So you don't have to worry about that. It's just, I think the fact that you don't have experience bugs people a lot.
Very much so. What did you end up giving this game?
I gave it an 8.25.
8.5. Wow.
That's right.
This is one of my visually one of my favorite games I've ever seen. I think this game looks absolutely amazing.
Hyperbole.
No, dude, it looks so good.
I'm not going to go that far, but I do think it looks really good because it's all papercraft. It reminds me of Tearaway a little bit, but I think it looks better than
Or a
Tearaway
lot.
actually. Well, yeah, because it's all made out of paper and like
It does look great though.
there's elevators that are like made out of. You can like see the edges of the cardboard, and there's like
Or the waves lapping on the shore, and it's just weird paper folding. It looks so
bushes, and like the bushes are kind of made out of like puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
different things. I was like, oh, that's a really cool like touch. And the attacks look good. So like visually, yes, it's a really good
Also, they
looking
have
game.
like special cards, which they also had in Sticker Star, which will, much like South Park, completely change the art style. Where it's like there's a lemon attack. If you have no interest in Paper Mario Color Splash, at least look up a YouTube video of this lemon attack, because it just cuts to like a beautifully rendered kitchen that looks lifelike on like a butcher block with like knives around it, and you're just like squirting this lifelike lemon into like Shy Guys' eyes. It is so cool looking.
Have you seen the plunger one yet?
I have that card, but I don't want to use it because I don't want to throw that card away forever. So you end up just stockpiling all that stuff like Mega Elixirs throughout the entire game.
Well, you can always go back to town. You can get more.
You can buy those
You can
special,
basically buy
those
them,
super
yeah,
cards
yeah.
again.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
So
Play the game
that's
right.
another thing. You can buy pretty much any card in the game. Like there's a place in town which sells you cards, so you can just buy as many as you want. And
Well,
since
hang on. They don't have the super cards there. I've never seen them there.
it's at a different place. I'll tell you. Like there's a
Okay,
different
okay.
place at the dock where you can buy the thing cards.
Okay.
So anyway, that's why I never had a problem with the card limited inventory thing. If anything, I was like cards in there that I was like, I just want to get rid of this card. And so I just like stockpile all the cards I actually want to have.
Yeah.
But yes, the game looks visually awesome. The thing that I think sold it for me was just like the Nintendo like touch of like humor, and their localization team is just amazing. It's like the jokes they come up with made me think like, is the Japanese version of this game as funny as this one? Because
I'm sure it's funny.
I'm sure there's like jokes that don't really translate, or like the puns they come up with are like, how did that work in Japan? You know,
It's
just
a
like,
tall order for localization, for sure. It's got so much personality in there.
right. There's so much personality and humor, and like every level you go in, you're doing something different. Like there's one like haunted mansion level where you go into the different like rooms and trying to help ghosts out and do a tea party. There's another one where you're like, this guy's like trying to sail across the world, and you're trying to like help him get across the water.
Right,
And, like there's
right.
one where you're like finding clothes for this guy who's like naked, that's still a naked Toad. So like every level just has like its own like mini story associated with it. And like that was what really sold me on the game, was just like the humor, the story, the world exploration.
This is the most frustrating game I've played this year.
Really?
It makes me want to effing scream. It
But
makes
you're not
me
playing it
so
right.
mad. Yeah,
You don't know
right.
about the dock.
Oh, please,
Yeah,
because they
come on.
sell those cards down at the dock.
Go to the
Just-
dock.
Okay,
Sitting on your plunger.
systemically, it is garbage to me. Like the whole idea of like, oh, you're going and talking to these characters, that's all well and good. Having these one-offs, it's like, okay, that's fine. New adventures, new little areas that are bite-sized. They have combat in this game that you can get into to use cards, disposable cards, and then the outcome of that combat isn't any sort of progression. It's just to get more cards. It's just this circle and closed little loop that there's absolutely no point to. I think it's systemically a very, very stupid game.
Sure. Like I complained about that in the review. Like the combat does feel a little superfluous, but you do pick up like the hammers, and which upgrade your like
Max Paint, but that's
Max
never
Payne.
really an issue.
Max Payne. Yeah.
Yeah, Max Paint too.
Because the other thing is like the color is being drained from the world, and so you're walking around each level trying to recolor everything,
Right. Which is
I
fine.
thought was a lot of fun.
It's fine. It's something just like, okay, have some sense of progression. I see a number go up at least for like the percentage that I have actually painted this world. But the rest is just like, it just seems like the most boneheaded decision. It's so tough because this game is so lovable in so many ways. Visually, it's great. I think comedically, it's really strong. At times, I think every line has to be a joke, which is a bit too much for my likes, but still absolutely amazing.
Uh-huh.
And then systemically on the RPG side, it's just, they whiff so hard.
Wow.
It makes me so mad. It's
Can
like
we just flash hater above his
yeah,
head?
it feels like you're like falling in love with like a beautiful woman, and then you find out like on the third date that she's like a Holocaust denier. It's just like,
Whoa.
how can they get so close to this and then just botch it so hard?
So I take it you didn't like Sticker Star?
No, I didn't like Sticker Star.
Did you like Paper Jam?
Paper Jam, I also am not crazy about the Mario and Luigi games. Like, it's definitely closer and I think it's better, but I went back and played more Paper Jam because I hadn't finished it after being so frustrated by Color Splash. And going back to it, it's still like, I don't want to talk to any more fucking Toads. I have had it up to here. This game is just thousands and thousands of Toads. If you go back and look at the first 2 Paper Marios, it is absurd how creative those games are. Characters up the wazoo. It's so much variety, even amongst Toads. And now, with these RPGs, if you want to call them that, it's, hey, talk to 16 more Toads. Have at it. Hey, how about you go to a new area? We have 3 new Toads here. One has a green head. Check this out. It's fucking trash.
What would your
How
score
many times
be?
are we going to have to beat this?
A lot. I don't give scores, Reiner. I just complain.
But
it's so tough. But because again, like the tone and the spirit of it, it's so right on. But just missing that progression, it just makes for this weird game where you never get rhythm, you never get momentum. It's just a lot of talking. You go to a new area, talk to 6 more Toads. Okay, here's a little thing. Let's be confused about where to go because it's also a lot of puzzles in there, and I think they are not great puzzle designers.
Oh, that's right, because you're not a puzzle guy.
But it's just vague. It's like, where do you want me to go next? What the hell's going on? Huey's not saying anything. He says, like, go back down to the town, talk to some Toads. Like, I don't want to talk to any more fucking Toads.
You should go to the dock.
Yeah, you should go to the dock. Apparently you never went to the dock.
More.
It is interesting because I definitely recommend, like, don't think of it as an RPG because it's not really an RPG anymore.
What is it?
I don't know.
It's a Toad talking simulator that looks amazing that has some funny puns in it.
Almost like an adventure game.
Totally.
Yeah, because you're kind of wandering around, like you said, and you like go through an area and you're like, oh, that unlocks this area now that I go to.
Right.
And kind of like that adventure, like story element to it.
Imagine a great adventure game where every character that you talk to is exactly the same.
With a fun combat element to it.
No, it just slows it down more.
Superfluous.
And it's worse because it's like, okay, you get into random encounters, but instead of just mashing my way through it, now I have to sort through cards and go through an 8-step process to like flick them onto the screen to attack. So I have to worry about these disposable items at the same time as the combat just taking longer because instead of just hitting the hammer button, I now have to sort through my dumb cards to find the hammer button to then launch towards them and then time it beyond that. So it's taking something that's completely superfluous and making it even longer. It's so dumb, and they're so talented over there.
You have spit on me 3 times in your angry rant. If you're going to continue, you need to get me a towel.
Okay, that's only fair.
Can you lose?
Get him a towel.
Fights?
Yes, you certainly can.
Okay,
yeah.
so is there a sort of a tactical element to it of like, is the fun in it deciding what cards you want to use and stuff like that? Because you're not leveling up, right? You're not like, okay.
Yeah. There are some battles that you can just run from and you're fine. There are a few battles where you're like, you have to do this battle.
Like a boss.
It, right. Well, yeah, and then a few others. But, yeah, and then, like I said, you collect the hammers, which upgrade your paint. You do get some other cards sometimes from battles that are maybe a little bit rarer, like buddy cards. Yeah. But, I mean, I'm not going to defend, like, I think there is something lacking there with the fact that, like, I think if they had added an experience system where you're leveling up, that would have helped a lot.
They have the perfect structure for this game. It's the first 2 games. It's right there. It has progression. Just put other characters in there, learn abilities along the way. Like, there is a fun experience. And the idea that they just throw it away and just keep volleying these last 2 games out, Sticker Star and this one, where it's just like, what are you doing? It's like they're fighting with one arm behind their back. It's so frustrating to see that team wrangled in by this. And the reasons for it are more frustrating. Know the reason? Yes, they talk about it in the Iwata Ask for Sticker Star, how it's all Miyamoto, who all credit goes to Miyamoto, all hail Miyamoto, but it is the dumbest decision I think Miyamoto's ever made, the idea of stripping the RPG-ness out of the Paper Mario series. In fact, actually, if you guys are up for a little...
Play the new Star Fox? Oh.
Well, come on.
Hey.
If you guys are up for a little fun here, if you want to go to Game Informer Show Theater, actually have the Iwata Asks down here. Hang on a second. So in this version, Reiner, you're going to be playing, let's see, the writer on the game, who's Kudo is his name.
Okay.
Ben Reeves, you're going to be playing the producer, Tanabe. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Reeves, you should play Iwata.
Oh, Iwata.
Yeah, and all Kyle, you'll be Tanabe. I'll be Ayama, who's the director.
So I'm Tanabe then.
You are Tanabe. Okay, so...
Wait, I have like 1 line.
I know, but you really got to sell it. Okay.
I don't know who Kudo is.
He's the writer. He's the writer for Sticker Star. and I believe he
become
worked
a
on this
writer.
one
So
as
what
well.
is
writer
like-
of Mario games? What would that
So
be?
where was like Tanabe? Like, where's he from? Like, what was he like as a kid?
He was the director of Super Mario Brothers 2.
Okay.
So he's a nice guy. All I know for sure about
Kyle.
these people is that they don't have Asian accents.
You know what's interesting,
Of
Kyle?
course.
He sounds exactly like Toad.
Oh, okay.
You know that voice.
Maybe, hey, maybe the guy who has one line should be doing Toad.
That's
here,
true.
right?
Reiner, you're Wade. Wade,
What does
the
Toad
booth,
sound like, Kyle?
You want to back us up a little bit here?
Miyamoto's not even in this.
Oh, here we go.
He's not, but they talk about him. Here we go.
Really? Getting-
This
I
is
feel
music
like
from Color
I'm
Splash.
turning into Tanabe.
This is the Iwata Asks for Sticker Star, where they explain where all of Paper Mario went wrong. Ayuma, who's the director, Ayama. After E3, Miyamoto-san played the prototype and said it was just a port of the GameCube version.
I had heard that at first Miyamoto-san said that something like an RPG would be fine. So for a while, I thought that something like the previous one would be fine.
Mr. Iwata?
That must have meant that you.
No. Nope. Keep it straight. Keep it straight.
Oh, you want me to redo that line? Is that what you're
Please,
saying?
one more time.
That must have meant that you hadn't done much that was new.
Right. So we wondered what to do. Then the idea of us using stickers came up. If we're going to do that, then we might as well use stickers for the whole thing, including battles. And we decided to begin rethinking the game mechanics. Then about spring of 2011, we had Miyamoto-san look at the prototype.
And how was that?
Personally, I thought it was better than before. But it turned out to be no good.
He said it was boring. I remember that clearly.
Listening to you talk, it sounds like Miyamoto-san was a scary presence for the team.
Yeah, he was.
We have no shortage of the anecdotes in that nature. What we can reveal today are that only... wait, I'm sorry, can I read
let's
that
back
line?
up.
Yeah.
We have no
again.
shortage of the anecdotes in that nature.
Anecdotes
Anecdotes in that nature. What we can reveal today are only a fraction of them.
saying he has an overwhelming amount of stories of them being scared S-less of Miyamoto. Anyways, go on.
Aside from us wanting to change the atmosphere a lot, there were two main things that Miyamoto-san said from the start of the project. It's fine without a story, so do we really need one? And as much as possible, complete it with only characters from the Super Mario world.
That's a difficult task. That's a difficult task. And this is why did you pick us for this? That's a difficult task. In some ways, that would be the exact opposite direction from recent games in the series.
Yes.
Yeah, with regard to the story, we did a survey over the Super Paper Mario 24 game in Club Nintendo 25, and not even 1% said the story was interesting. A lot of people said that the Flip 26 move for switching between the 3D and 2D dimensions was fun.
That project came together because of that idea. Kudo-san, you were in charge of the script, so what did you think about whether a story was really necessary or not?
I originally saw it in a way that's similar to Miyamoto-san. Personally, I think all we need to have I think all we need is to have an object.
Objective.
Blah blah blah. Personally, I think all we need is to have an objective to win the boss battle at the end of the game. I didn't think we necessarily needed a lengthy story like that in an RPG.
That was good. When it comes to characters in the session of Iwata Asks covering Super Mario Galaxy, Miyamoto-san...
Holy Lord, you guys. No, we got it.
Hey, we got it.
We got it. Go.
Hey, come
No,
on.
Have at it.
It's an 8-point font.
When it comes to characters in the session of... No, I can't even do it. What are you doing? Iwata Asks covering Super Mario Galaxy, Miyamoto-san said that he was finally able to put the essence of Mario into words for the first time. He says that a Mario-like design follows from function.
Follows from function.
What did I say?
Oh, you got it.
Oh, okay.
It was just emphasizing it for you.
So, when something otherwise comes into the mix, it doesn't feel right.
You understand the character from its design, like it has spikes, so stepping on it will hurt. But being unable to use new characters is pretty strict. Of course, we could not make any new enemy characters, and as for allies among the Super Mario characters, there's really only Toad in various colors.
Let's pause this for a second here. So Miyamoto says, hey, because in the Mario games, form follows function, which is great for platformers, going back to the earliest days of like, hey, make it look, make sure it has a purpose
I would
in
say
that
it's
whole
good for
system.
all video game genres, but go ahead.
RPGs?
If there, well, in a Mario RPG, if there's a spiked character, then you can't move your jumping move. I
Okay,
think
what
that's
about
good design.
NPCs you talk to? That's where they're applying this
Okay.
logic. That's where they're like, only use Super Mario World characters and populate an entire RPG with them? It's the worst idea. It's just applying it to the wrong
So
genre.
this is post Super Paper
Well,
Mario, then, right? Because they had
yes,
new
this is
characters
Sticker
in that
Star.
game.
They had a bunch of new
Correct.
characters there. They had a bunch of new characters in the first couple of Paper Mario games.
Yes, it's
and
nonstop.
so what happened here is Miyamoto Miyamoto said, don't do that anymore.
Right.
Okay.
Go only use, if at all possible, Super Mario World characters. Anyways, Kudo, pick it back up. Wait in the booth. Music. Here we go.
But personally, the more restrictions there were, the more excited I got. They may look the same, but we put in some elements in which their personalities are slightly different. So you can tell the difference and you think, hey, are you that Toad from back then? Toward the end of development, I could feel that I became one with Toad.
You can't forget them. Like when they have a bad personality, even though their faces are the same.
In addition to red, there are blue and green Toads. However, we held all but the red one in reserve, so we had to think carefully over when to use them. When we decided to put the Ranger 27 in the forest, there was a weird vibe, like, Green Toad, you're up.
That's right. At first, we were making a lot of individual allies, as in a regular RPG, but when we decided to focus on stickers in order to make a clear change with previous games in the series, it was like we started all over again by throwing out the system, including those characters that we had made up to that point.
Oh, you purposely threw out the basic RPG structure.
Yes. We decided to make it so that players would face stronger opponents by throwing out the whole concept of experience points and levels in favor of gradually gathering stronger stickers. I had actually been thinking for a long time that I wanted to get rid of the RPG experience points. In the freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land game, which Kudo-san and I worked on together, the player character didn't develop at all. We adopted a system whereby they solved everything with money. Just like real life. No, there were times when Miyamoto-san
Hey, Kyle, is that still you? Yes, it is.
It is still you.
Continue on.
Yeah, I can read. No, there were times when Miyamoto-san has really gotten angry at me. Like about the treatment of Bowser. But the Super Mario games have an unorthodox lineage that Miyamoto-san thought up as its creator. So while Paper Mario, as part of that, must preserve certain things, I think there is a point to tackling new and unusual things.
All right, and scene.
Smooth job.
That is the history straight from Nintendo about the terrible decisions that were made along the way to end up with the Paper Mario Color Splash, which has its charm and Reeves likes.
I guess you're right. It sucks.
I'm just saying, I love the Iwata asked, and this is one of my favorites, just for showing that, like, yeah, Miyamoto like sets down rules, which I'm all for. And the idea of like, hey, let's do something new. Let's try and be minimalist. I think we can be creative within that space. That sounds great. I'm glad they're excited about it. But intelligent systems can do such amazing things. They don't have to follow this.
Yeah. I wonder if they are. I'm hoping that they're getting over that fear of introducing new characters, like following Splatoon. Like
right.
I wonder if like they'll be willing to kind of inject more characters. Because you even look at
But
stuff
this is
like
the Mario universe, you know?
Yeah, but you look at stuff like Mario Sunshine and like Super Paper Mario, and the new characters in that game were like geometric shapes and blobs. Like they were like they couldn't really go much further than that, you know?
It almost seems like they're trying to treat it more like Mickey Mouse, where that is a very small clubhouse of characters,
Popeye.
right? Yeah, like you cannot expand that too much. You know, when's the last time they introduced new characters into Mickey?
It's fair because Sonic really went that route of introducing new characters and it really got muddied very quickly.
But if they would have saved all those new characters instead of for the platformers with Sonic, just saved it for that awesome game that BioWare made, the RPG for Sonic, that would be totally fine. I'm just saying it doesn't apply to every genre, that purity of design.
It is strange to read through that script. Thank you. I feel like I learned a lot today.
On this note, do you want to peel back that white piece of paper behind you? Just the white one. There we go. If you want to just rip that off there, it's a new set dressing. If you're only listening to the audio version, check out the video version of this set.
Watch out, Miyamoto. I think Hanson's coming for you.
I now wish I would have talked to Miyamoto about it when we interviewed him at E3.
Yeah.
They were talking about Color Splash. I wish I would have remembered to bring up that whole choice and just
say, why'd you do that?
I licked his feet just out of praise and then said, you blew it so hard. Don't do this.
Don't do it.
Anyways, I think we've covered a lot of ground. Do you guys want to move on to some cool community emails?
Yeah, let's do it.
And welcome back. We got some super great emails from the community, everybody.
Hanson, have you calmed down a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I
mean, you've kicked Reiner out.
I scared Reiner out of the room. If you're listening to the audio version, Reiner had to go. He had to go and play Color Splash for himself to appreciate what they got right and what maybe they got wrong. But we have some great emails from the community. People wrote into podcast@GameInformer.com. We're going to read the best emails out of the batch. Then at the end of it, we're going to pick our favorite and we're going to ship them out something real nice, which I think it's Reiner's spit-soaked shirt.
Oh,
Yeah, so we can look forward to that.
All right.
So
clone you.
that's right.
It's real Dantac spit.
First email's from Brock Randolph. Hey guys, recently I decided to revisit my personal game of the year in 2014, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. I like to use the full name. And it got me thinking. I would assume that a sequel is inevitable, but when? Can you please discuss what you liked and disliked about the first game and elaborate on what you'd like to see added if they do in fact make a sequel? What do you guys want from Shadow of Mordor 2? Assuming it's in the works?
Yeah, that was also my 2014 game of the year.
Yeah.
As like I'm sure they'll go off in some crazy directions and like do all kinds of crazy. But as far as like a small thing that I would like to see like more like navigation options, like climbing and running through the world and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of like acrobatics in games, so I think.
So you want more of like the weird ghost powers for like traversal?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like grappling hooks and hook shots and stuff like that. You know, that kind of thing.
Roller skates.
Yeah,
I really love that Nemesis system, which is the main selling point for that game for me. So like anything they can do to continue to like beef that up. Like, making like maybe you're building up an army as well, and like I don't know, like you control more of those guys, or they become your lieutenants. And
right, I think that's what they have to triple down on. Like I like the idea of them lowering the focus narrative, because I wasn't that into it. Did you guys really give a crap about any of that stuff?
But I think maybe that's a thing they need to do better then, is like make a better narrative.
But I think the way that they make a more memorable narrative with the second one is just lowering the scripted sequences and just up the Nemesis system to a point that it is telling a cohesive story.
That it tells stories. Just get Ken Levine's whatever he's working on. To
Narrative
put in
Legos,
there.
everybody. Yeah, basically to fully embrace that approach.
Yeah, I think that and like the world could be a little bit more dense with things. There were elements in the world that felt a little sparse. You were kind of like running across the same brown fields over and over again.
It was just kind of like a barren volcano-ish area. It felt like you were like walking through Mordor or something. It was not much
that's
going
a good
on there.
analogy.
I would also really love just like more unnecessary cameos from familiar characters in films. Just whole missions dedicated to that one character who died in the first film would be great.
That's fun. Well, what do they do? Do they put it in Mordor again? Do they change the name?
Oh, no. I mean, it's like Arkham. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to take place in Arkham, you know?
Oh, so they call it like Shadows of Mordor.
I mean, it's Shadows of Mordor. It could be like the light cast from Mordor.
Okay.
I just want to hang out with some Ents.
I think that's the thing is you go to other parts of that world and see like more crazy characters.
Just take the Lord of the Rings Online geography and then just put Tallinn in the middle of that and call it a game, everybody.
There you go.
I mean, they could even have like populated towns and stuff like that, because like you guys were saying, it's a little barren. There were those like strongholds, but like to go to a town that's not ripped apart by orcs or whatever.
But then you'd feel guilty about killing everybody in that town.
Yeah, well, you might.
Right. Also, Brock Randolph says, P.S. Dantac for president. Let's pray to God nobody writes in his name. Anyways.
Because it'd be a landslide if they did? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly right. This is from, oh man, I don't have their name, but they're the biggest Andrew Reiner fan, and they're from Boise.
That's why he left.
He says, what's up, GI crew? It seems like this year has been one of the worst years for release dates. Almost every AAA major release this year has had at least one delay, with some titles being postponed as far as to late 2017. What do you cats over at GI think? Do you think that developers shouldn't announce release dates till you know, and they know that the game is practically finished, and they know they're going to hit their mark? P.S. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Letter of the week right there.
I
don't know. Like, it never bugs me when things get delayed. Maybe it bugs me a little. I can't say that. But, like, especially if it's a game I'm really looking forward to, like South Park, I was kind of bummed that got delayed. But in the end, I'm, like, still excited for it, and, like, that means it'll be a better game.
Well,
so,
what do you
like,
think
it's
about the
hard to
philosophy
complain.
of not announcing till they are so sure?
I do wish some companies would hold back. I remember, like, BioShock got announced so far out. BioShock Infinite got announced so far out that you're just, like what was it, 5 years or something? It just felt like a super long time. Or, I don't know, Shadow of the Colossus. Or, no. What's the one?
Last Guardian?
Last Guardian, there we go.
Right. Well, maybe this person that wrote in will be satisfied by, like, if the NX is in fact coming out in March, that's going to be such a quick turnaround. This might be exactly what you're looking for, where they're going to announce all those things. And then, in theory, they won't be delayed.
It seems like Rockstar kind of has been doing that with their last few games, because didn't GTA, that got announced like just months before coming out, or Fallout 4 was similar, like 6 months earlier, which, like, I don't know. That's actually kind of cool, because you're like, oh yeah, now I'm going to play this game this year, and I'd be really excited about it. It's like, iPhones.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I disagree with the idea that this year has been really bad for that. I feel like the way the industry has been over the last
average.
7 years or so, it seems like there's always the big profile delays.
But I'm totally with Mystery Man there. Like, I think it would be great if release dates were not announced until they knew. Like, if it was just a few months out, even would be fine.
Right.
Like, I don't mind the 2017 as a release date upon announcement. But yeah, I like the idea of being committed to release dates.
I think marketing teams prefer to have more than a few months to build up,
but not
excitement.
too much. They don't want. I feel so sorry for the people who have to make a new Final Fantasy 15 trailer after all these years. Like, it reminds me of that Simpsons where Marge has the pink dress and she has to keep retrimming and recutting the pink dress to make it look new. Like, every new Final Fantasy 15 trailer just makes me laugh because hey, let's introduce you to Noctis, everybody, for year number 8.
Oh, he's my favorite.
I do wonder if because of the Saturn, they kind of did that, and it's available now, and that was kind of a disaster. I wonder if people kind of were scared of doing that for video games.
Well, they got Fallout Shelter. There's a success story that's in that same.
But I'm
vein.
saying the point that I was getting to is today, the way information is distributed so fast. They can totally do that. And they can release a game. They can announce a game being released tomorrow, and everyone will learn about it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not great for the Game Informer cover business, but
no, it's not.
Ian from Chicago writes in and says, "Hey, GI crew, I recently saw an article online speculating on a rumor about GTA 6 being an Xbox exclusive in the future." I didn't see this rumor. He says, "While I doubt it would actually happen, what do you think about the impact of a tentpole third-party franchise like GTA going exclusive to Microsoft? Would it be impactful enough for Xbox to catch up to Sony? Thanks. Keep up the great work."
So the rumor is GTA 6 would be Xbox exclusive.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's way too early.
He even said that he says in there, I don't think that's going to happen either.
I mean, there's not that many franchises that could make that big of a difference, I think, at this point.
Well, there's
GTA is probably one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What did you say? New Vegas?
New Vegas. No, I think Street Fighter V was an amazing get for Sony.
Oh, there you go.
Sure.
Until the game came out and people, everything around it was not great, even if the core fighting people are happy with.
So the question is, would that make a huge difference at this point?
I mean, it would.
I
don't
would.
think they have enough money to lock that down.
That's the problem is the benefit of going multi-platform for publishers is such a big deal that in order to compensate for that, Microsoft or Sony has to pay the company to go single system, and that's just a lot of money.
The more interesting route is kind of that soft third-party support, something like Destiny, where Sony's been behind Destiny for so long, or even Call of Duty now. It made the switch, but just treating it and kind of acting like it's exclusive with
Here's
DLC.
the better version,
right?
Or you get this earlier here on this system.
It's so much the safer route.
Tomb Raider.
Yeah, I would say that is the future. But then there are examples of Dead Rising over for Microsoft, or Street Fighter V. It's just Capcom making these weird deals, but it's still around plenty.
I do. I mean, I think games development benefits from being single console, so I think it makes a better game ultimately, but less people play it. So
I mean, to his point of helping Microsoft out, I feel like Microsoft's slowly climbing back up there. It's not like they're as far behind as they used to be.
I think they're going to be in real good shape a year and a half from now.
It's a pretty even race.
I think
today.
by the end of this console generation, it'll be closer to even than it was when we started.
Yeah. Mike from Tallahassee says, "Hey, GI crew, at what point do you think we'll see game developers begin to target aging gamers with games aimed at 60, 70, 80-year-olds? And no, I don't mean games like Find Your Dentures or Leisure Suit Larry type. But yeah, as gamers age, do you think we're going to start seeing games courting that older demographic?
I would think you'd have to eventually. More than games courting the older demographic, I think just the gamers are going to age into being old, and they're going to like games still. So it's just older gamers are going to continue to like games.
Yeah, you're going to court the 80-year-olds by making NES throwback games. It's not like you're making things like, ooh, banana paste.
I mean, when we're in old folks' homes, we'll probably still be playing Call of Duty.
I'll still be trying to play Driver San Francisco with the person in the room next to me.
You'll still be complaining about Paper Mario. That's how it's going to work.
Does the film industry do that? Do they make films that for older people?
Red,
I guess maybe.
I don't think they do. I think they just make them for babies.
For babies and adults. That's the line, right?
That's right.
This is a baby game, baby movie, adult game, adult movie.
You know what I think about a lot is VR, room scale VR. How long until somebody just goes and gets the licensing, I guess a little bit Ready Player One style, just for full nostalgia, where it's hey, 80-year-old, put on this VR headset and you will be back in high school. All the music, I guess for us to be peak 2003. Here's all the music. Here's simulations with like all licensed nonsense thrown in there, and you can just go try and date the prom queen. Have at it.
Like a high school experience?
Yeah, that type of like courting VR for people that are old and have a life full of regrets. I mean, I guess is the core.
So they
of it.
want to be a teenager again, is what you're saying?
Correct.
I mean, we make like a Back to the Future game where you go back in time.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly
and make
have
out with your mom.
that currently. I mean, even like GTA Vice City was like kind of had that 80s.
But this
sort of
is more
aesthetic to it.
personal. Like,
Yeah.
hey, how about you don't blow it and
Is
get
that
a divorce?
is Life is Strange sort of like a high school? I didn't play Life is Strange.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
set
but
in a high
I'm
school,
talking
but-
about more wish fulfillment, personal stuff instead of like,
Okay.
hey, here's a story starring somebody that happens to be in high school.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that could happen as technology gets better, because I think just like, I don't know, processing that world would
Yeah.
take just like making a dynamic world that felt real. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We
Getting
haven't
it-
quite unlocked that yet.
The Nemesis system isn't quite up there for high
Yeah,
school levels of simulation.
I think Shadow of Mordor 3 is really where it's going to
Colon back to school.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, well, because VR is like right out of the gate. They're like, oh, we're making big action experiences and stuff like that. But one of the coolest things about being in VR is like looking at stuff, just like being in a room and looking at stuff. And I feel like there aren't a lot of people trying to make just like a little puzzle sim of your existing in a world. Like, don't worry about bombastic action or horror. Like, just like you're in a room and like just like Gone Home VR. You know, it's like just explore this place. I think it would work really well.
That's
in
why Rec Room is
VR.
brilliant.
Yeah, Rec Room is kind of toying with that idea. That's more of like a social sort of sports game, though. I would say.
Yeah.
So
Fabian from Katy, Texas, west of Houston, he says, I'm building my first PC this weekend. What are your most recommended PC games I should play?
I mean, a lot of it's on console now too. I would say XCOM is actually really fun.
That's on console.
It is on console now. So are we just talking like PC
exclusives.
exclusive?
There's a biggie coming up that we haven't talked about much on the podcast, but I assume you're looking forward to, which is Civ 6.
Oh yeah. Actually, that is a good choice. So Civ 6 would be up there.
Hanson
Actually, I'm
likes
really
that,
looking for
that dumb farming game a lot.
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley, which just got patch 1.1. Joe Juba and I were both big fans of it. I jumped back in. Joe's jumping back in as well. Like, you look at the patch notes and it's like, oh, there's so much here. Then you get back to your farm and it's a tough game to go back to. And it's just the thing of like, okay, I think there was something new over here. I'll go check this out. I'll try and trigger a new quest over here. But just trying to automatically get like to dive into the new content, like a Destiny update or something, it's trickier than you think. So I think it's an amazing patch and an amazing update to an already brilliant game, but
Are you
tough to just hit out the new stuff.
trouble remembering like what was I doing again?
A lot of
like
that.
kind of stuff.
Like, I remember I wasn't happy with my farm, but I don't remember why. So I think it's great for like starting new games specifically.
Right.
And still an awesome, pretty big update. So yeah, Stardew Valley and Civ
say
6.
Darkest Dungeon. I know that just came out
That's
on
on
console,
consoles.
so I'm failing this list. But
I think you're missing the core of this question.
A story about my uncle. I don't think that ever came to consoles. That was like a indie game that I reviewed. That was kind of cool.
Minesweeper. Seth from Cottage Grove, Oregon says, with it now being the spookiest month of the year, I have started playing through one of my all-time favorite games, Luigi's Mansion. It's the perfect mix of spooky and fun, but not so scary that I can't play with my daughter, who's age 3. So my question for you is, what are some other games that are great for setting or for getting in the Halloween spirit, but aren't focused so much on pure horror? Halloween era games, but not horror games.
So like
Seems to be the core.
silly horror.
I guess
kinda.
Costume Quest is a great example of
Costume
it.
Quest is good.
That's a good one.
It's a fun one to play.
Oh, Costume Quest 2.
Oh, great example. Great example. Grubbins on Ice, the DLC. Save that for winter.
That's
I
right.
recommend. I think of like something like XCOM, like tense games like that. I think they can work pretty
Yeah,
well.
that's
without
alien
just being
focused
pure
too.
horror. You could probably play that in front of a
Thumper.
3-year-old.
I think XCOM is pretty good for just about any season of the year, honestly.
It's XCOM season.
I was going to say medieval. Like, remember that old like PS1? That's how far back I have to go for.
I love in that game. I forget if it's when you run out of ammo, but when he just rips off his own arm and uses that as a weapon and just beats people with it.
Yeah.
Very funny.
That's pretty
Maximo.
good. It's a funny game.
Yeah.
That game's
Ghost
really
and
good as
Goblins.
well. There's got to be a more recent game than this. I feel
Nope.
like we're failing. Day of the
Got 'em
Tentacle.
all.
Sure. Jonathan DeLuca says, "Hey Ben and the Informers, if you could have
That's me, right?
that's right. If you could have any studio take on another studio's IP and develop its next game, who would you like to see make it happen? For me, it's CD Projekt doing Legend of Zelda. I'd also like to know, do you guys have a decompression or zen room for when things get nuts at the office or Tantak's terrible Overwatch score becomes unbearable and you just need a break? We don't really have a decompression zone.
We had that Vive room.
It's kind of like it, I guess. And he says, anyways, thanks. And I agree with you, Ben, about Metal Gear Solid Survive. Besides, I'll be having more fun with that than Death Stranded because I'll be like 70 years old when that game comes out. So thank you for defending MGS Survive with me in the lightest possible way.
I'm with you on that argument.
Oh,
Hanson.
thank you.
I listened to that podcast and shouted at my radio.
Dream Studio for Dream IP.
Rocksteady taking on just about anything. I think
Spider-Man?
Rocksteady does a really good job with the Batman games. Those guys seem to know what they're doing.
But
You
what
know,
franchise would it be? Come on.
Yeah, Spider-Man. How about Sucker Punch doing Spider-Man instead of Insomniac?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that'd
something.
be interesting.
But those are like that's not really like a game franchise though. I'm trying to think of like a
I'd want like Bethesda to take on Pokemon. I want something to shake up that Game Freak for me a little bit.
or maybe
That's a
Ubisoft
really good
San
idea.
Francisco to do Paper Mario.
That'd be a twisted tale indeed.
I would say Metroid and just anybody. Anybody in the world, please make that.
Who made Guacamelee? Was it Drinkbox?
Oh.
Yeah.
Do a good Metroid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, I could see that. I was gonna say Uncharted. Like it'd be fun to like mix and match. Like, what would Uncharted or not Uncharted? The Naughty Dog. What would Naughty Dog be really good at?
Yeah.
Like a game that doesn't have a story, and make them write a game that has, like, make a really interesting story for this game, right?
Oh, right. So you'd want Naughty Dog's take on Paper Zelda.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Glenn Kyber.
Unfunny. Super dour.
Glenn Kyber from Hawaii says, "Hey staffers, I would love to see more dedicated cameras for reactions like the trademark Dan Tech cam from an episode a while ago. I feel like Reiner deserves a Reiner reaction cam. Right now, it'd just be an empty chair, so I don't think you really want
Yeah,
that,
okay.
but I get a lot of love for that Dan Tech cam. I just wanted it to be a one-off joke, but we might have to
Give
make
Dan Tack more of a big head. Let's just pump it up
Play
as
a
we
little
go.
bit. Well, if you zoom in with the camera, it'll make it look larger. So.
That's true. Christian from Everett, Washington, who I believe won last week. He says, growing up in Detroit for the first 16 years of my life, me and my friends always thought Minnesota was just a state with a giant mall surrounded by forests and wolves.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. If you've ever heard the Giant Bomb crew talk about San Francisco, it seems like that city isn't great at all. I just wanted to know your thoughts on Minneapolis or Minnesota. GI is the best podcast. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Aw.
You're not required to kiss our ass in these emails, by the way. I really appreciate it.
But it helps.
Don't feel obligated.
I always kind of, because I really wanted to be in games journalism, and I always assumed I would end up in San Francisco, but I am very thankful that I am in Minnesota.
We were all just in San Francisco. And
That's right.
But downtown San Francisco, it's not great. Everything surrounding San Francisco, outside of the prices, I think is really beautiful and interesting.
It's good look. There's a reason a lot of people are there. The fact that a lot of people are there, I think, ruins it. This guy wanted us to talk about San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
No, Minnesota is nice. I'm not the biggest defender in the office of Minnesota.
You were probably the biggest hater.
That's true. I'm from Colorado, which is the best state.
No
And
one's ever said that.
it's
That's where South Park takes place.
I think if Minnesota were moved just like a couple hundred miles south, it'd be good. Because like the winters here suck. But like in terms of like in the summer, this is one of the best places to be. Gorgeous countryside.
Also, not
People
that
are super
crowded,
friendly.
not that expensive.
But it's still a fairly cosmopolitan city, so we have some pretty good art museums. We have a pretty good music scene. A
Yeah.
lot of good food, actually.
It's
Juicy Lucy's, burgers with cheese on
I
the
don't know about the
inside.
food thing.
I love it. What you guys got your soggy peanuts down there in South Carolina, or whatever the hell
Charleston
it
has
is.
some of the best restaurants in the world, man.
I'm sure it's great,
But I do not miss South Carolina.
Maybe
at
just
all.
need to get out more.
That actually could be the case too.
Yeah.
But Minnesota, it's really refreshing that like I travel the world to go on these cover stories, and I understand it's only like a week or so in these different cities, but I always feel like compared to most places I've been to, I feel like Minneapolis is still where I'd like to be over any place else. I just love it. I love that it feels smallish, but it's big enough, not crowded, not expensive. Good people everywhere, the nicest of the nice. And Kyle, your entire family is slowly migrating here, so
Yeah,
it
I
must be
know.
worth something.
Yeah, it's true. Brothers and sisters slowly moving up here. Parents
There
are retiring soon, so I'm sure they'll probably end up here at some point.
We welcome them on the show. What do you guys think? Email of the week.
So we had the Mordor. The third party one was pretty good.
I feel like the game company swap, we didn't really do it justice, but I think it was a
good
good
question.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to answer, but I do like that one. Yeah.
I like the Mordor sequel. I like just burrowing in exactly on that one topic.
Yeah. It's just
Sure,
one of those-
let's go with what you like.
Well, this is a
It's one of those
discussion.
things where it's like, I don't know, it's like you can always think about like, oh, what would I like for my favorite game, you know? And ultimately, I just want them to do whatever they want to do because they came up with the game to begin with, so they're gonna have the best ideas. I don't think they should listen to me.
Okay.
I think they should listen to me and do everything we just said.
So you
But
guys
I
maybe-
like that question. It'll
Would you
do.
take
It's a good
Studio
question.
Swap over it?
I'll take Studio Swap over that. Yeah.
Oh,
All right. Reeves, you're going that route too?
yeah.
All right.
Oh, but there was the Dan Tack cam.
Nope, not that one.
All right, that's Jonathan DeLuca. There you go. Thanks a lot for writing in, everybody. We'll ship you out something real nice, Jonathan. And for now, stay tuned, everybody. If you want to hear JV Serial, Elise and I talk all about the ending of BioShock 1. So here's the conclusion for our game club.
Papa loves mambo. Mama loves mambo. Look at him sway with it, getting so gay with it, shouting Olay with it. Wow.
Hello and welcome to the final episode of our game club for BioShock 1. I'm still here. We're now joined by JP Gwaltney.
I was here last time.
Yeah, that's true. We have Elise Favis.
Favis. Hey.
How would you pronounce it?
Elise Favis.
There we go. And Serial Vasquez.
It's pronounced Elise Favis. Actually.
There we go.
It's two of
That's
us
a good
now.
joke.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm glad we're back. We're back because we all finished the first BioShock, and we're going to talk about the second half of that game, which was shorter than I expected.
Yeah.
Doesn't take too long actually to get through it.
Yeah, like after Fort Frolic, I was expecting another
no,
10 hours or so, because I think JV said, like, oh, it's like 40% of the way through for Fort Frolic. And so I had that in my mind, but really, I think I only spent like 4 or 5 hours to finish it off. So definitely under 15 overall for me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I feel like the sections ramp up in a way. Like, I think as you get towards the end of the game, the sections get shorter and shorter to just funnel you towards that ending.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shorter and shorter and worse is what I would argue. But I think we're going to talk about all that stuff. So to kick things off, should we go through some feedback from last episode from the community? Because a lot of lovely people wrote into podcastinginformer.com with their thoughts on Game Club, and a ton of people played through BioShock with us. I think there were more people playing along than any other Game Club. So thank you to the readers and viewers and all that.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
First piece of feedback comes from Ken L. From Boston. He says, I enjoyed the Game Club, and I agreed with lots of what I heard, except security bots. They're an objective good, like pizza.
I disagree.
I also disagree with this asshat.
This Ken
Pizza sucks.
sounds
No.
familiar.
This is Ken Levine.
this guy?
Yeah, Mr. BioShock himself, creative director of the game and whatnot. He sent that tweet saying that security bots are an objective good.
Remember, I
saw
said they
that
were good.
Okay, well, clearly you're correct. I stand by them being not good. And
They're pests is what they are.
less frustrating in the back half of the game. It seemed like
There were less of those moments where you had to kind of stealthily, avoid those red spotlights.
Right,
So-
right.
I had
Which
the
I
exact
appreciated.
opposite experience.
Really?
Because I feel like, I guess maybe there were less, but I just stopped caring at a point. So I triggered like way more alarms in the latter half of the game than I did early on.
This is a sneaking mission.
Sorry, I went guns blazing towards the end.
So
of
the
it.
second that you trigger an alarm, do you guys open up the map and look for the bot deactivation
Nope.
panel?
I just electro everything
Yeah.
and then blow
I
it
was like,
up.
Come at me.
You have to go through so many electro bolts just to take those things out.
Oh, when an alarm activates. I thought you meant whenever
Right.
like
Oh, yeah.
something sees you, then yeah.
Okay. You just
Yeah,
run
but
for
like
the
if a
panel?
security bot or like one of the chair sentry gun sees me, then I just fry it, blow it up.
Naturally, yeah. I had a weird experience where I booted the game up right after Fort Frolic. I forget what the next section is called. Hephaestus?
Yeah, Hephaestus.
Thank you. Booted it up, and I was on the remaster version on PC, and it kept on crashing again. And I was just like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm done with this. So I downloaded a save for the original and went back and jumped into the original one on Steam, which it turns out still looks great. But along with that save, then it was completely different plasmids, like maxed out money, basically all the secrets. It's like 100% playthrough. So I just felt incredibly overpowered booting up the save, and it was kind of fun to go into it.
You went the parasite route.
I guess so, yeah. It was a great thrill, like, oh my gosh, what is this now? If I don't move, I'm invisible, and all these things that I had no idea were even in the game. And like this person really maximized like being stealthy and using the wrench a fair amount. It's like, well, I guess I have to try doing that because it seems to be the build they were going for. So it was strange picking up from that. But if you guys had any more technical issues?
Nope. It's been fine on PS4 for me. I mean,
Okay.
some weird textures where walls disappear briefly, but
Yeah.
I think I was having an issue with audio diaries sometimes not when I was pressing X not going, but
Okay.
I don't know. That was the only thing. And then earlier on I was having a problem with the what was it? I think with the pause menu. I actually can't remember now, but it was
Sure.
something going on there.
Okay.
I had a thing where when I launched the game at one point, it reset everything, so it was running at like 720 or something, and like all my options weren't saved, and had to go back and redo everything, like turn on windowed mode or whatever. It was a weird.
Oh yeah, I think
reset
it was freezing for me. That's what was happening.
Okay.
With Plasma.
Well, I'm glad we all made it through it.
Yeah.
So Pat O'Connor writes in and says, "Hey guys and Elise, I loved the last episode, but I was surprised you guys didn't bring up Gary Scheinman's score at any point. I think the melancholic strings, coupled with the excellent choices of licensed tracks, Fallout, Eat Your Heart Out," he says, expertly complement the game's iconic atmosphere. The actual original music isn't as frequent as it is in BioShock Infinite, but I think that makes it all the more effective and emotionally impactful when it does appear. The brief crescendo, help me, when you choose to spare little sister makes that rare experience of kindness and rapture even more profound. We didn't really talk about the original music. What do you guys think?
I think it's nice when it, like he says, when it does show up. Like it does sort of hammer on, whatever's going on at the moment. But, it doesn't necessarily stick out to me in the way that something like Fallout soundtrack does.
Sure.
So,
yeah, I can dig it.
I think that I like it when there are moments, might have been in Fort Frolic or just, when I was going against splicers, there's this very like theatrical music that comes on during these fight parts, which just make it so much fun.
Right. Well, I guess, you actually played through Fort Frolic now because you hadn't quite gotten there last time.
Yeah, it's Flight of the Valkyries, isn't it? Or something.
Waltz of we talked about the Nutcracker suite.
Yeah, the Nutcracker. Yeah.
That whole thing, whatnot.
I love that.
I didn't know that we'd get to see Sander Cohen again. Or at least have a reference to him.
That was
You can see him again.
You can actually, if you didn't kill him in Fort Frolic, kill him there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which is what I did.
Yeah,
I killed him later on.
I was curious about it because it's like two people dancing, and it's like, these splicers are having a lovely time.
Right, and
really
he's kind of warning you, like, don't disturb us.
Right.
But if you do, then a battle starts with him. And you can kill him off.
Interesting. Did you guys do that?
Yeah.
I always kill him off immediately, like before then, just to get his goodie box.
I didn't want to kill him off originally just because there was something very intriguing about him, like in a very creepy way. But I was just like, no, I want to see where this goes. And I'm glad I did because then I had that weird scene where I went into a battle with him later. So.
Yeah.
I like the difference in attitude that he has when you face him. And he's like, because when you, in Fort Frolic, he's like, oh, he's very like, he's a flair for the dramatic and being very theatrical, but when you enter his realm and you kill him, he's like, I'm coming down there to kick your ass or whatever. He just opens up the door and says, I'm Sander Cohen or whatever. And he's just belligerent, possibly drunk, and you just shoot him in the face like you do everybody else. And
there we go.
Yeah.
So speaking of shooting in the face, Mitch here writes in and says, having played Infinite more recently. Oh, hang on a second. This is Ryan Davis. I'm sorry. Hey friends, so first of all, I wanted to let Elise know that she's not the only one who was weirded out the first time they played BioShock. JV excused the game a little bit last week, saying that shooters back then were clunky, and Ben, crazy guy that you are, said it actually controlled pretty well. Think about what you're saying! Sure, the plasmids are fun and still feel pretty good, but the shooting mechanics are undeniably clunky, even for a 2007 game. Some contemporaries of BioShock include Modern Warfare 1 and Halo 3.
I want Modern Warfare.
There we go. Thank you, JV. Do you guys think it's fair to talk about BioShock as a really great game, maybe even one of the best, without classifying it as a great shooter?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and like other stuff makes up for it. I still would argue it's not that bad. Maybe I'm just not precise.
No, it's not bad.
No.
It's not awful, especially if you're thinking about it by 2007 standards.
And he compares it to Halo 3 and Modern Warfare, like the two pinnacles of like console FPS feel. Like, of course, it's not going to feel as good as that, but compared to average 2007 shooters,
there's also more to it. The actual like aim your gun and shoot like a dude in the face. Like, I feel like that suffers a little bit. Well, I mean, it suffers a lot, but I feel like there's more to a shooter than how the guns actually feel. Because I feel like BioShock excels because I feel like the situations change enough during combat, and I feel like I have answers to those changing situations. So, like, if I want to burn someone, I have to factor in, are they near water? And if they are in water, do I want to like switch to electrobolt and electrocute them? So the shooting may not be like greater by like those standards, but the combat I think is actually really good.
Absolutely. You never recommend BioShock as a shooter.
Right. To me, it's like, you hear the same thing about Deus Ex. You never really hear, at least the first Deus Ex, called a shooter. But, it and BioShock fit firmly in the same category for me.
Right. Like, I wouldn't say, like, for a design course, like, in shooters, like, this is how you want to tune your shooter. But if you want to say, like, this is how you actually do combat and make it expressive and fun, then yeah.
And it gives you so many ways to approach different combat scenarios, and that's what makes it so great. That's also what makes Deus Ex so great.
Yeah, for sure. I really love by the end of the game, going through all these weapon upgrades, how stupid the pistol looks. I don't know if you guys upgraded it all the way, but it's just like this lopsided, bulgy, ugly mess with nonsense strapped onto it. It's fun seeing those.
My favorite
changes.
is the crossbolt, because all the other upgrades for all your other weapons are just so zany, like the pistol and like the shotgun, and it's like, nope, you're just sticking a bar on top of your crossbow. It's like, okay, man, I don't really get this, but
make it easier to play peekaboo with that.
I feel like I didn't use the crossbow enough. I think it's really
Yeah,
cool
me
every time I
neither.
used it. But
it's like the most powerful weapon.
Yeah.
Like it kills, like on later levels, it'll kill pretty much any splicer in one hit, especially if you upgrade the bolts.
okay.
It is fun to use. I feel like I forgot about it in a way.
Am I not? That's what you have in Burial at Sea, BioShock Infinite Part 2's, like the second part of the DLC, right? I think when you're Elizabeth, I think you have a crossbow, don't
I've tried
you?
to forget about it.
Really? Why? What's wrong with that?
I just don't like Burial at Sea.
What?
at all.
Interesting. Go
It's
on.
It's very fan servicey in a way that's not compelling to me. Like it feels like you stack that against something like Mass Effect 3 Citadel DLC, which, people who wrote that and designed that were clearly like reading up on forums about like all like the ships and stuff, like what people were really into.
Yeah.
And there's just so much zany, heartfelt love there. Whereas Burial at Sea just feels like a cold sort of dour amusement park ride through a place we've already been. And here's a cameo from, Sandra Cohen.
Hey, look at this. I had probably had the non-ideal route of playing that because I played that not having played BioShock, so all that fan service was just confusion for me, and it was just like, oh, I'm glad I got to
I
explore
hadn't
that for a
finished
little bit.
BioShock at the time,
Right.
so the ending I was just like, okay, only half comprehending what's going on here, but I really liked seeing like Rapture in its glory days.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
I mean, that is cool. Like, that is like the only cool thing about that DLC to me is like, oh, wow, this is Rapture before the fall. This is really neat. And, the graphical improvements and whatnot. But just as a whole, like, experience of here's a story that you're living out and you're interacting and you're, seeing things fall apart. It just wasn't that interesting to me.
You would rather it not exist.
I would have rather not played it. I would say, I'm not going to say.
There's so much good about Burial at Sea.
I would not say, this shouldn't exist. It's just, I just wish I hadn't played it.
Sure. Mitch writes in now, and he says, having played Infinite more recently, I can't help but notice this obsessive backtracking that I find myself doing. The on-screen arrow, which I know you can easily disable, is both a blessing and a curse. I am constantly finding myself fighting this dreaded arrow, frantically running opposite its constantly insistent pointedness, so that I may find every power-up, audio log, safe, etc. On the one hand, it's a great tool to both encourage this kind of angry exploration, as well as give clear guidance towards the next objective, while on the other hand, it's an obnoxious arrow that I never trust until I am damn well ready to. What do you guys think about the old objective arrow?
That
I
sounds
turned it
about...
off.
Did you? Oh, that's right. I forgot you're going for.
I
hardcore
keep it
run.
on, but that sounds about right. Usually I'll look around everywhere first before heading in its direction.
It depended on where I was feeling playing it this weekend. Of like, am I going to get this done in time for Game Club? Should I follow this thing or should I purposefully avoid it? It's a weird feeling in a game to have an objective arrow and then all you're worried about is I need to hit up every place except for where that's telling me to go, just to make sure that I can make it work.
Right. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's because I've played through it so many times, but it's just like I'll look up at it occasionally if I need to remember, okay, what path do I need to go down? But otherwise I just don't notice it. Like it's not even there until I need it to be.
I remember a lot of BioShock Infinite was spent hitting the back button, getting that little like guidance thing.
That was a really cool thing.
It was, but I feel like maybe it's because the environments are so much more complicated in Infinite. I'm sure some people would argue that. But I felt like in Infinite, it was less clear about where to go. Whereas in the first BioShock, like I knew that it was leading me the right way. I knew that if I had to go up the stairs, if I maneuvered this way, it would point exactly where I needed to go. Whereas Infinite, it'd be like, go over here. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to get over there. I don't know where you're trying to tell me to go. Where it gets jarring in the first BioShock is when it doesn't pop up at all. Which it happens a fair amount towards the end because it turns out basically the game from this point on is just a series of fetch quests.
Oh boy. Sorry, I'm just thinking about the becoming Big Daddy stuff. Pissed me off a bunch. But
I
anyway.
completely forgot that was a thing. I'm sure at some point I heard somebody mention it, but the community also had those thoughts. Let's see. So Kevin from Denmark says, I love BioShock and have probably beaten the game 3 times. There is, however, one thing that I forgot, which really annoyed me. When you become a Big Daddy and get the helmet, the screen turns into a circle to show you the perspective of a Big Daddy. I felt my view was more disoriented and served no purpose. Am I alone on this thought?
Was the most infuriating thing Like your view is so obscured by that stupid helmet, and it doesn't do anything. It's
Yeah. I feel like I take more issue with the fact that they don't stick the landing on that. They don't actually follow through on having the rest of the game be like that, because by the time you get to the last battle, like that, they just seem to have forgotten about that whole thing where you're a big daddy at that point.
Well, Fontaine clearly says like, "Oh, it's not going to help you with that 25% damage boost or defense." It's like, okay, well then why am I doing this? Like, I fully expected to have like the drill arm and like ram it through his head or something like that.
But they don't. They just say like, "Oh, your view is obscured for this one part of the game," and then we just go back to like having your view be fine.
I would argue that the game as a whole does not stick the landing after the big twist.
Yeah.
Like everything after that is either mildly enjoyable or absolutely miserable.
Yeah, I feel like switching narrators from Atlas to Fontaine, I think, is maybe the only thing that I really like about that latter half of the game or whatever. But everything else is just like, I feel like the environments we go see aren't as interesting as the first one. And that ending is like, it's like a Tekken ending.
It is
it's like
bad.
It's like finishing a fighting game story mode, and then it's just like, here's everything that happens for the rest of the rest of time.
Yeah, it's my problem. My problem is that it goes from being like this grand sort of sci-fi action adventure with a little bit of horror, where you're exploring this great place and you're trying to unravel a mystery, to something that's basically an arcadey revenge plot. And it's just the worst.
I feel like it goes from like, check out this world, to like, no, wrap it up. We got to wrap up this.
That's what it feels
line.
like. It feels rushed. Like it is the ultimate rushed section in the game, is those last 2 or 3 hours.
Just because it feels like, hey, here's a fetch quest, have at it, get it over with.
Here's another fetch quest.
Right. Hey, what do you think about another fetch quest?
Yeah.
And also, like, just the overall goal and objective. I feel like in the first half, it does a really good job of making it clear, like, hey, this is your larger mission. This is your larger mission. First, it's like, rescue Atlas's family, take down Andrew Ryan. And then I guess larger mission is like, dig yourself out of this hole, stop being brainwashed, take potion 192. It's like, oh, that's not quite enough. We need to do more. It's like, there's nothing fun with a larger goal of just, hey, dig yourself out of this narrative hole, player. It's like, you need something more than that. And to have the way that you dig yourself out of this hole and get back to even is then to do all these fetch quests.
Yeah.
It's
and
not
then
great.
One of just a terrible boss battle. That boss battle is so bad.
That did nothing for me.
We have so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going on Big Daddy, because a lot of people had thoughts on this. Barbara Joe writes in and says, I'd like to say just how much I despise the Big Daddy helmet. Anything that obstructs my field of vision in a video game is just the worst. I also can't help but think about how stupid Jack looks during that whole sequence. Clomping around in the boots and the helmet of a Big Daddy, but he's still got that dumb grandpa sweater on. No Big Daddy suit at all. Do they just not want to create new arm models for Jack, or am I missing something? He must look like a toddler trying on an adult's clothing.
Wasn't he not wearing the gloves, though? I thought that was the whole...
Yeah, I think that was part of the... Yeah, that whole thing. It was also the only time I ever got lost, because I was looking for the boots I was looking for a while. It's like, where the hell is the library?
The boots was the first thing I got. I couldn't find the last thing. I forget if it was the scent.
It was
the
the third scent thing that I couldn't find. I was like, oh my god, where is it?
Yeah, that's in a slightly different area.
I found everything else while looking for the boots. I think it was the first thing. I'm gonna go find the boots.
I do like the sound design and how that changes when you put on the helmet. Everything gets muffled and it kind of makes you feel distant, or even the boots having like the heavy stomping
just
around.
Walking around as Big Daddy and with the little sister beside you and hearing that like booming voice, like it for a second it would take me aback, and I'm like, oh wait, no, that's me. It's not another Big Daddy. That's me.
Do they explain that, why you have to have your voice modulated to
so that you can talk to the little sisters, I guess? But yeah, so there's that weird like,
so you can become the little sister whisperer.
Well, but in the voice modulation area, they have like this weird grindy thing where it's like, oh, got to change your voice box. And I'm like, is this going to be some effed up sequence where they like shove it down my throat in first person? It's like, no, there's none of that.
It just starts spinning and then, oh, you're good.
Yeah. All right. We'll go easy on it. Chris from Chicago says, this is the first time I've gotten a chance to play a game for a game club, and also my first time writing. So hello, Christopher. Finishing the remaster up, I had completely forgotten about the whole Become a Big Daddy boss fight at the end. While the big twist ranks up there as one of my favorite storytelling moments in games, I can't help feel put off by that last boss sequence with Fontaine. After a dark sci-fi experience that felt at least semi-rooted in reality, an arena boss fight spent pouring clips into a superpowered monster hooked up to a machine felt totally out of place. Am I totally alone here? Although I must say that Big Daddy suit grandpa sweater pairing can't be beat.
I love his Geralt sweater. It's the best. That's what I kept thinking about, is like all of Geralt's beginning armor in The Witcher 3, because they're just Christmas sweaters.
Right. Yeah, I also had that moment where I didn't really know what the boss fight looked like at the end. Like, I knew that people weren't overly happy with it, but when you open up, when the door opens up and you see Atlas sitting there, it's like, is this like a Destiny raid boss? This is just the most bizarre, out of place thing.
It's weird.
So Johnny Superhoffy writes in on that topic and says, "What a disappointment the end of BioShock was." Our love fest has completely changed from episode 1. That ridiculous boss fight with Fontaine was completely unnecessary. Some games just shouldn't have boss fights. Although I do like how they made the bad ending better than the good ending. Also, if you were very unprepared for it, having little ammo, first aid kits, money, and if you didn't save before heading up, you may not be able to even beat the boss fight. The level before has to be one of the most frustrating escort missions in video game history. The little sisters are extremely weak and will die almost instantly, and they keep on complaining that you're too slow when you're in front of them. It was enough to drive me to my boiling point. P.S. Earthbound for next game club. All right, thanks, Johnny. The escort stuff. It wasn't that bad for me. The most annoying part for me was just her constantly calling you Mr. B.
Yeah.
Come on, Mr.
Her
Bubbles.
whole, hurry up, come on.
I can see
the
angels dancing in the sky.
Just a lot of repeated lines.
Yeah.
It seems like the mission statement for BioShock Infinite was like, let's take that relationship and just make her into Elizabeth and make sure that she's not annoying this time around, which I feel like largely they succeeded with. Because there is something there about, working your way through this environment with somebody, but it just wasn't done in the best way.
Right.
Jeff from Massachusetts writes in and says, Big Daddy complaint here. During the whole game, you can't hurt a little sister while Big Daddy lives. But you have to play through a section where you have to defend the little sister, and she dies really easily. It doesn't match up with all the events leading up to this point.
Yeah, it's weird because don't they mention that like they have super regenerative powers or whatever?
Yeah, I thought
like
they were like immune.
Yeah, almost like indestructible or whatever. And
You got the
I
one
don't
that
really
doesn't, the
understand.
one that's just super weak and ready to die.
She's immune to my
Yeah.
wrench
One.
is the only thing I know. I kept like trying to see if it'd damage her and it didn't do anything.
Or you're trying to fix her by putting a wrench
I
on
was
her
trying
nose.
I was trying to play Battlefield and fix her with my wrench. I whacked her.
Wow. Okay.
I liked hearing the splicers coming. When she was like mining the Adam out of the guys, you could just hear him running Serious Sam style, like coming around the corners. I thought that was kind of fun. And I don't know. Do you hate that section, JB?
No, I don't hate it. I just like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember trying to play it on hard when you had to get all the achievements of like, I'll never use Vita Chamber and like, play it on the hardest difficulty or whatever. And I remember having a lot of issues with it then, but this time it was like, fine. I had actually at some point I was just like looking for stuff and I was like, oh, right, I should go defend the little sister and just went back and backtracked.
All you need is telekinesis. You just pick up a corpse, throw it at them, create more corpses, throw more corpses. It's just never-ending ammo.
It's beautiful, JB.
I'm not sure how I feel about the disconnected way you say that. Like, all you need are corpses, man. Just make more corpses.
It is true that they're useful. I'm just thinking, those like electrical wires.
Yes.
You can just get the corpse and you go through, and it's like
Wait, what?
The
get it to shock
bolt
the corpse
traps.
instead of you by using
The trap
telekinesis.
bolts,
Really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
because if you try to telekinesis the bolts, it'll come back and like 75% chance it'll shock you, but you can just
Okay.
pick up stuff and throw them
Yeah.
through there.
Oh, interesting. So, contrary to what Johnny Superhoffy wrote in, saying Jamie from Meridian says, one thing that stands out for me is how easy and quick the Fontaine fight is. I say this as someone who does not play many shooters. What do y'all think? I was playing on medium difficulty and just kept hitting him with the grenade launcher, which
Yeah.
brought him down really quick. Otherwise, I still had fun playing one of my favorites again.
I think you have to, if you had to describe a boss battle, is I had to keep hitting him with the grenade launcher. I don't think that's a quick fight.
That's true. Yeah, just maybe not complicated
Not
for
an
them.
interesting
Yeah,
fight,
it's
though.
it's just he is just a bullet
Simplistic.
sponge. is
Yeah,
the problem.
like
Really?
it is the bare minimum boss fight.
There's,
Just because it's you and a big guy.
But, I mean,
It's
there's a
just-
little bit
there's
of like,
not even any like clever technique to it,
all right, that's fair. But what about like changing his elements? That's something. When he like cycles through, oh, now I'm ice, now I'm fire, and you have to kind of Pokemon
It's-
it up and realize what plasmid you should be using instead.
It still feels like a boss fight in like a Nintendo, like original Nintendo, Super Nintendo game, though. It just feels so misplaced. It's so wacky, and I don't know.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's just a consistent theme of that game, though. Is that like every time they want you to fight someone who's important, it's just they take the regular character model and they just give it a ton of health. Like Steinman was that way too.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
I thought it was cool that you actually had to like mine the atom out of it, and that it tied into gameplay by actually
Yeah.
going up on your little UI element. That was a
Somewhat
neat little
thematically
touch.
appropriate, yeah.
I'm also not in love with the ending, but I'd say it's above an NES game.
Well,
no,
which,
no, no, I just mean
which
that
ending
fight.
did you
Yeah.
get though?
I mean the fight, not
Right.
not the ending.
Yeah,
Did,
the ending I thought was just trash.
Did we all get the good ending?
No, I got the bad ending,
Really?
Oh.
which is stupid because like I harvested. I maybe like harvested 4 little
That's
sisters
too
throughout the course of
many.
it. And
I
then-
only killed
you
4
can-
little girls. I'm still a good person.
well, it treated me like I wanted to like conquer the world as Hitler by the end. I was like, wait, what? This is
4 little
my
girls.
character? It treated me like I was just slaughtering absolutely
little girls.
everybody. Hashtag 4 little girls. No, but also it was just so quick, and it was me looking at guys on a submarine like, what's happening
Well-
here? I guess I'm taking over the world. All right, back to title
Yeah.
screen.
The good
No
ending
credits.
is just super cheesy. So
What happens there?
we save the little like 4 or 5 little sisters, and you go back up to the surface, and then they kind of become like your daughters. Like they
You become grandpa.
And then it just kind of cycles through your life, and you see it ends with you on your deathbed, and like the little sisters like holding your hand.
Like there's a whole hand motif where it's like, first you like grab her hand, and then
Yeah.
it's like she's like getting her diploma with her hand, like someone's
Are
handing
you
her a
kidding
diploma.
me?
No,
And
no,
then,
really.
and then they
Little
get
sister
married.
gets a diploma?
Yeah,
then
no.
like one of them is like accepting a
It's-
ring from some guy, and then
It's so sappy.
I think this is a Google ad.
It's so sappy. It's
The post credit sequence for this podcast should be you watching that and us
Oh,
like
that'd be
filming your
fun.
reaction.
That sounds really dumb. So, like, does it show like Jack in the crowd at the graduation wearing a Big Daddy
No.
helmet?
No,
like,
it's-
oh,
it just
literally
cuts
all
from one
hands.
it cuts from one shot of like some form of hand exchange taking place, where it's just like the diploma, the ring, and then Jack letting go of someone's hand because he's dying.
Does
Yeah.
it show credits in this version? Because it was really weird that
only-
there were no credits in.
No,
mine.
you don't get the credits if you're good.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's not a
Okay.
weird unlock thing.
Yeah, it's not a great end. This is kind of why I prefer BioShock 2 out of all of them. Is because I think
Overall,
oh yeah, overall.
Yeah.
okay.
Uh,
You say that with a little wry smile,
No,
like
no,
really
no, no,
pulling
no.
one over
Well,
on
it's
people.
because you acknowledge. I think a lot of people are. They always have like no way. It's like the original one is way better because it did all this original stuff. But like BioShock is like maybe one of my favorite second drafts of like no, let's actually do this part well.
Yeah, BioShock 2 is just to me it's a more satisfying whole experience. Where BioShock I would not argue that BioShock has more important moments in terms of like what it contributed to video games and some more like jaw-dropping moments, but as taken as like an interactive story like with characters and how they evolve, who they become. I just think BioShock 2 is leagues better.
It has more endings and most of them are more satisfying.
Yeah, it's like 8 endings.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So
depending on how many sisters you murder and depending on how many other people you murder. It's a murder checklist.
So for the perfect game, you want to just have credits roll after Andrew Ryan, and then just bleed right into BioShock 2. Just cut out that back half of BioShock 1.
I would have had Jack die right after the twist, and that'd be the end of the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
run
it
the
would just
boxes
be
in.
completely bleak and memorable, and not here's this video game bullshit.
He gets eaten by a whale.
Yes.
That's right.
What is it with
and then
you and the whale?
The whale
I can't
puts
talk
the
about
key into that machine, and then suddenly the whale and Fontaine run rapture.
I'm into it.
I would. Yeah, that's how SpongeBob SquarePants happens.
No one understands me like this whale. Darren from Stillwater, Minnesota says, "Hello, everyone. I had only played until about halfway through BioShock before this game club, and I was left a little bit underwhelmed by the game back then. Now, after playing through the game in its entirety, I will say I can definitely see where all the praise comes from. It's a really good game. I love how the game slowly drips new mechanics and gameplay aspects throughout, and also some of the most memorable interactions between the characters in this game are great. I thought the scene with Ryan commanding you to kill him was fantastic. The ending, though, was a little underwhelming for me. The final boss fight felt out of place and pulled from another game, and the quick little scene with the little sisters, good ending, at the end was a little disappointing. I'm glad I gave the game another try. P.S. Dishonored 2 for the next game club." All right, thanks, Darren. Yeah, so everybody loves the Andrew Ryan scene and the Andrew Ryan climax.
It's a good moment.
It's great.
I guess my question for you, Ben, is how much did you know before going into this? Because I feel like that's one of those moments you would just eventually learn about, no matter whether you'd played it or not.
I knew that you beat him to death with a golf club, and actually, I wrote down in my notes right when I started. Here's all I know. I wrote, "Atlas screws you over. You're made to question why you've been doing what you're told in the video game with Would You Kindly. Harvesting little sisters has consequences, and there's a climax and then a long, dragged out ending." I thought it was like maybe a little bit like Inside, where there's a climax and then it goes on for a little bit longer. I didn't realize that it was like climax
So,
and then 4
yeah.
hours.
the last fourth of the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
What the
It's a
hell?
weird spacing for the narrative.
Yep.
It's really bizarre. Someone wrote in on that exact topic. They say, this is Jonathan from Indiana. I've played through all 3 BioShock titles numerous times, and while the twist of the original is a worn hat by now, I still think the delivery is among narrative's best in video games. Unfortunately, the game doesn't know how to handle its pacing post-twist. My question is this. Would you kindly delve into why there seems to needlessly be more content at the sacrifice of thematic and narrative consistency? Seeing how the Little Sisters were made was cool and all, but having it placed after the twist diminishes the impact as all you really want to do at that point is chase after Fontaine and enact your revenge.
I feel like Irrational learned after this, though, because like System Shock 2 actually had the same exact problem. Like you got to the twist, and then there was still a good third of the game left where you were just doing chores and stuff. But in Infinite, the twist is at the end. Like, yeah,
that's true.
It's at the very end, so there's not really anything after that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it sounds like a really easy problem to fix on paper. Like, obviously, there's probably stuff we're not aware of since we didn't work on the game. But it just sounds like something would be so easy to fix. You know,
I feel like they were going for maybe another thing that's kind of tried it out is like a weird thing was a Fight Club where they have the twist, but then it's not just the twist and then ending. Like it's not like M. Night Shyamalan. They try to figure out, okay, now you've learned this important thing about how the entire movie has played out. Mm-hmm. Now what? So, and I think they try to go for that, but they don't really.
They didn't know how to handle it. Yeah, at least that's my read on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice. Okay, now we learn a little bit more about Tenenbaum. I guess Fontaine kind of be like, oh, you're still following orders from her, aren't you? And there's a little bit played with there, but narratively, it just feels very aimless. Don't have a strong drive to really finish this thing off after that. Like Fontaine, I think, is a cartoon character and bad, but we can get into that in a little bit. But I think, contrary to what you're saying, Serial, I think the environments are actually really cool in the second half.
Yeah.
Like, I love the area with all, like, the posters of, like, the missing people and whatnot that are just stacked up really high. There's some areas that kind of look like an underwater subway, stuff like that. I think the environment design is really strong.
I've been crapping over that whole end section, but I do like the one bit where your powers are being messed with.
Yeah.
And you're forced to, like, new stuff or use new stuff.
Yeah.
But that should have been much earlier. Like, that could have been really cool much earlier on, I feel like.
Yeah. And to say
would it make sense earlier?
They could find a reason for it to make sense. It's science fiction.
I feel like it works though because it comes at a point in the game when you're kind of stuck in a rut of what plasmids you're using.
Yeah, no, narratively, I think it's very well placed.
Yeah. So. It's confusing though because when it was cycling through, it was like, oh, Electrobolt 3 and all these powers that I didn't have yet.
Yeah. Part of it was kind of cool. It's just like I'd never had Winter Blast that entire playthrough, so I didn't get to freeze people and then bolt them in the face.
Right.
But like what I was saying about the environment, like the reason I don't like the environments is that I feel like they're a little too convenient. Like for one, you go to Apollo Heights and like Suchong, Tenenbaum, Sander Cohen all live in the same block somehow. Like
they had a sitcom.
Yeah, that's my favorite sitcom of the 1960s. And then like you go to the part where you're building the Big Daddy, and just all these like wildly different areas seem to all be coalesced in the same place. It just feels like a lot of areas built around like, okay, we need to hit these points, and we need to do it as quickly as possible.
The one part of that whole section that stands out to me the most every time like I'm done with the game, because I think it represents just sort of how much of a dull grind the last bit of the game is do you guys remember when there's that tunnel with like the subway cars or whatever and it's filled with water? Like to me that is just representative of that whole thing where you're just trekking through this, having to deal with this bullshit.
I like that there's one area in that there's one subway car where there's a ton of trap bolts, and you go up there and you say, oh, there must be something pretty cool. And there's just like a bunch of snacks. It's like some guy was just holed up with this like collection of like candy bars and
eating
chips
candy bars and wraps.
Yeah, he's like, no, this is how I'm gonna wait out the apocalypse. It's just like with my safe and my candy bars, and I'm gonna wait this one out.
The J.V. Gwaltney method. Yes,
exactly. So we should probably talk about the big old twist itself, because a lot of people obviously wrote in about that. Well, first of all, maybe we can just play it. Maybe we can get some audio from Andrew Ryan himself. I think he's on the phone here.
Sounds a little something like this.
Hey, Andy, what's up?
And now he's come to murder me. In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A father, a family, an enemy, a crash, and then this place. Was there really a fire? Did that airplane crash? Or was it hijacked? Forced down. Forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they're activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master. Was a man sent to kill or a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys. Come in. Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly find it? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit, would you kindly? Stand, would you kindly? Stop. Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys.
There we go. We all remember.
Mm-hmm.
Good old Mr. Ryan.
Was that from my playthrough?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay. I just kept hearing the uncloaking sound,
Oh,
like while he was
really?
talking. I was like, "Oh man, I should have turned that off."
I was a little bit underwhelmed by that segment, and like Serial mentioned, like obviously it gets spoiled, left and right and whatnot. But all I knew is, oh, you beat him to death with this golf club. I was really struck by the idea that they take full control away from you.
Mm-hmm.
It seems obvious to me, and I'm curious why they didn't do this, where it's like, hey, the whole point is like you're following these video game objectives blindly, and now we're telling you to do these things. Wouldn't it have been 1,000 times more powerful if just the game wouldn't progress? If he says like, hey, run, sit, and it's like, until you press the button to do those things, it doesn't progress? Wouldn't that be more interesting?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to see like the execution of that, because that also might, as cool as it sounds in concept, it might just end up looking really dumb, like a slow ass QuickTime event,
What? I
If they
guess
just
if it's slow, but
if they did like a reverse tutorial where they said, "Oh, run," and then they showed the prompt of like, "Use the control stick to move forward."
but at that point you're so deep in, you know how to do it.
Smash
But the
B.
whole point is you have no control at all, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, but I think where the story is most interesting to me is kind of in a Stanley Parable-esque way, where it's like you have no control, but you've been going through the motions because of this video game.
But
you've been
in
following
that,
this larger objective
in that
because
section,
of that.
it's all about not having any control at all and realizing that.
I guess.
I feel like forcing the control is maybe a little bit obvious, but I think they were just working within like the constraints of like, okay, we have to sort of drive this point home.
Yeah.
Like,
I get what Ben's saying here, because it is like a very odd turn still, like when you get there and then suddenly control is ripped away from you, because the game's clever up until that point because you are doing what the video game tells you of your own free will in a way that simulates having no will. Right. But then it forces it out of your hand, which is, so there's kind of like a clash there.
Yeah, it's because it's never had you've never had to move involuntarily before, and like it drives home the point of like, oh, I thought I was doing this because I wanted to, but this entire time it's because I've basically been told to.
Actually, no. There is one other point, and that makes that scene make so much more sense. Is when Jack stabs himself with the Evo. That's the first. Like the game takes away control from you.
That's true.
Yeah, and when we were talking about last time, like why did this dumbass do that? Well, mind control.
Okay.
Well, what's your logic for him talking in the beginning then and then nowhere else?
What do you
I
mean?
remember we talked about that last time. You're like, oh, I think there's a reason for that. Why Jack talks on the airplane in the opening. And
because he saw the little note that said, "Would you kindly?" And so he opens it, and then he's just...
No, but why does he talk during that then?
No idea.
Okay. Damn it, Jamie, you teased it last time.
So the thing that I think I hinted at in the last podcast was that like I'd have to go back and watch both of them, but I feel like he throws the gift a little more forcefully in the remastered version of the of that intro video. I could be crazy, but like
I think you might be crazy.
I don't remember it being that obvious that he was, I guess in hindsight, that he was activating a bomb. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Wait. What is it that he says again?
His son, you were born to do great things. Well, you were right.
Well, yeah,
Something like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, we're also talking about like lab project kid, like someone who was bred in a lab. So, they could, just tell him that over and over again. It becomes a sort of mantra before the Manchurian Candidate stuff takes over.
Right.
So was the only choice, so I'm just thinking narratively, but like was the only choice we really had as Jack harvesting or saving little sisters?
Absolutely, yes.
That is the only
I guess so.
thing that we have a say in.
Yeah. Why?
So burn down the orphanage or save it.
But why? I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting.
Why?
We had that free
Yeah,
will
he
in
never
the
tells you-
first place.
Right.
He never says, like, you would think like Fontaine would just be like, no, just kill them, get
Yeah,
more
'cause
Adam. Would you
you-
kindly kill all the little sisters you
Yeah,
encounter?
yeah.
I'm surprised they don't. Yeah, I'm
So
surprised they don't do that.
why did we have that choice?
That's a great question. I don't know. I am largely confused, and I'm curious to hear from JV, who's played it 1,300 times. The Fontaine-Ryan relationship is largely still a little bit confusing to me.
Okay.
But why wouldn't Ryan just tell him exactly what's going on? Like, why is he kind of willing to be killed by Jack?
Because, Jack is Ryan's son.
Am I an idiot for not picking up on that? Someone
All
else
right, when you
mentioned
go
that.
into a strip club earlier, you go into, the dancer's room and she's
Yeah.
dead. And you pick up a video or an audio recording, and the implication is that Ryan had sex with her and that
Yeah.
she sold Jack to, what's his name? What's the scientist's name again?
Suchong?
Oh, Suchong.
Suchong. So Suchong and
Build
Tenenbaum
him.
work together. And so my reading there is and Ryan pretty much tells you this, is that Ryan is so disappointed with like his offspring being, a slave that he either, like that's the most humiliating thing he can do is, make you kill him, or, it's a way to try and break you of the trance. So it's interesting because you can either see it as like an act of like love or just like straight up venom. So there's a lot of like interpretation there.
Yeah.
It almost seemed like a really ruthless, strange way to drive his point home.
Yeah. There's also the two other bits
Driver
of-
his point home.
Yeah, there's
Wow.
Go ahead, Serial.
they have like two little bits of evidence, but yeah, it's not something you're gonna pick up unless you play through the game again. Like they show you that memory of like Ryan going and finding a stripper, but like they tell you earlier on that like you only have those like images in your head if you have DNA from the person whose images you're seeing. So they're like, why would I have a flashback of Ryan unless I have his DNA? And the other thing is they say, I'm pretty sure it's an audio log that says is like Ryan originally it was supposed to be just bring back the Vita chambers were only supposed to work for Ryan.
Oh.
And so no one else had access to the Vita chambers, and so you're left to think, well, why do I also have access to the Vita chambers?
Gotcha. God,
Yeah.
I'm an idiot. I did not pick up on any of that.
No, it's.
I mean, both of those things are things like that first one you're not going to pick up on that
Yeah,
on your first
that's
playthrough, and the second one you have to
pretty
find that
deep
audio
stuff.
diary.
Yeah.
But
So-
the most interesting thing about the tie-in novel is like it focuses explicitly on Ryan and Fontaine's back and forth, like through the second half. Like that is what that whole book is about, and it's like fun to read that.
Yeah.
Like why they hate each other so much, and like why Ryan's whole utopia basically falls apart because Fontaine's like, I'm gonna play the game better than you do.
Right.
Like he plays Ryan's game better.
So was Fontaine in charge first? Like Ryan built Rapture.
Ryan built Rapture, was in charge. Then Fontaine,
Had some sort of like criminal organization.
yeah, he
Basically
through
came up with
prostitution.
plasmids, right?
he
Okay.
basically brought plasmids into the picture.
Right.
Yeah,
But he was never fully in control at any point.
no, because the whole point is that his whole goal throughout the game was for him to have that full
overthrow.
control.
Yeah.
And so I
Okay.
think Ryan's whole conflict, I guess, is that he's mad at Fontaine for playing the game better than him, but he realizes that like in trying to fight against him, he's trying to put laws into place to control the free market. But then he realizes that's the whole point of Rapture has been to have the free market be free. So
Yeah.
he's
Yeah,
mad at Fontaine for forcing him to be the thing that he hates.
Yeah, he basically resents Fontaine for creating the market for plasmids. Like Fontaine didn't necessarily create plasmids, but he created the market
Because
for it.
it basically ends up proving that his society isn't perfect. That
Yeah.
isn't the
But then
utopia
His
what's his
utopia isn't a utopia.
Okay. Then there's some line where Ryan says like, "Oh, he didn't understand the marketing potential of Little Sisters." So he still had some connection with the idea of harvesting Adam and whatnot. That's not completely disconnected from him, or is he just saying that he can improve on Fontaine's
For Ryan?
obsession?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like it's just
Wasn't he generally fine with the whole little sister situation?
yeah, like you find an
Which is
audio log where he's like, "This
strange.
grosses me out, but it's profitable."
Like there were times where I'd really empathize with Andrew Ryan, and then there were other times where I was just like, I like your principles originally. I like that idea of making this kind of like utopian society. But then at the same time, it's like there's some really twisted stuff in between that. You know, especially like, I'm just fine with, the little sister situation, and that just seems really screwed up to me.
And I think that's part of the reason BioShock works, is because
he's not black and white in any way.
Yeah, it's an exploration of like the space between ideology and practicality.
I almost wonder if he became too hungry for power at one point.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And that's what drove Rapture into the ground in some ways.
I disagree with his premise also that the only place this could exist is in a city under the sea.
It totally exists in space.
You could buy an island or go into space, for Christ's sake. There's other places you can go to here, Ryan. Also, I enjoyed the audio log where he's just talking about like, you think anybody else could build this? They don't appreciate what an accomplishment this is. I feel like it's a little bit of the game developer coming through, Andrew Ryan, a little bit of that autobiographical thing of like, this is hard, everybody. Why don't you appreciate this more?
Sure.
So on the deep lore stuff here, Jeff from Massachusetts writes in again and says, I do love the twist, but it begs the question: why does Andrew Ryan let you kill him when he knows the trick? Is it a fatherly love thing? Has he just given up on life? JB already talked about that. Is it well thought out that you are Ryan's child and have enough of his genetic makeup to slow down the security systems? This also means that the splicers are just defending Ryan and you're really the bad guy of the story up to this point. As for the twist, there were some indicators. Peach Wilkins tells you flat out, quote, "You're doing Fontaine's work." At the time, you don't really know much about Fontaine, so it's easy to miss. Ryan at one point tells you you're a puppet. And then more importantly, he's wondering, the picture you see in your flashbacks, is that Fontaine and Tenenbaum behind you? Or who are the people in the picture of your parents?
Was that Suchong and Tenenbaum? Maybe?
I don't know. JV, you're thinking really hard about this.
It doesn't seem like it's Suchong. Like maybe it's just a photo they held up to Jack while he was in the lab saying, remember this, this is your family, because there's a lot of leeway there, but it could be.
Sure.
Could be actors. Or
whatever.
One thing that I never 100% like understood was like if the game starts with him not knowing who you really are, right? And then by the end of it, he's like, "Oh, you're my kid." And also, I guess I found the room that had the very obvious "Would you kindly" scrawled on it. So I guess this is what happened. And there's for some reason Suchong like decided to have a podcast in there and tell everybody about how this whole thing works. So at the end, he's like, "Oh, I completely know what's going on." So I guess I don't understand how that arc happens.
Wait, well, I mean, so much of it, it's implication, right? Like, okay, why can Jack get past security, chambers or what? Why can he get past the security systems? Because he has Ryan's DNA. Ryan knows that, that the woman sold his genetic material. She knows that. So,
right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a stacking of evidence there. I don't think it's like too much of a leap for him to figure it out, basically.
But then there's that room like right next to his office that's just like the most obvious thing in the
world. Jared from Indiana says, "So I've been playing BioShock and my girlfriend, who is not a gamer, has been watching me. Well, she picked up on the whole 'would you kindly' phrase when you first make it to Rapture. To try and preserve it, I just played it off as if it was a totally normal phrase to say. So when we finally got to the twist, her reaction was to yell at me, and then she started to freak out that Atlas was a bad guy. P.S. She fell in love with BioShock, and we decided to name our new kitten Atlas. So I'm glad that Game Club named a kitten.
All right,
cute.
I'm glad you said kitten and not like we decided to name our kid Atlas.
There's just been like this eerie silence as we just like.
Look, I know that's the reference you're trying to go for, but other kids aren't going to see it that way. If you name your kid Atlas,
my kid's middle name is Electrobolt 2. Jonathan Quevedo writes in and says, one of the interesting things about BioShock is that, like other books or movies with a great twist, it causes you to want to replay it just to see all the times the wool was pulled over your eyes.
Yep,
this is true.
I mean, knowing that it was the key phrase, it definitely stands out when you play it. And then they do the thing, which I'm always split on in games or movies or TV shows where they have a twist and then they show like the flashback to like, remember this, everybody.
Right.
I think a huge part of that thing's success is Atlas's accent. And they talk about that in the one of the documentary features they have.
Oh yeah, what do they say?
They wanted to look for the right voice actor. They don't delve too much into it, but they say like we had to nail it so that it's not super obvious. And for whatever, like they said the phrase at some point was Excelsior, because Ken Levine was like a huge Stan Lee fan.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be like just a substitute for something more substantive later on. And I guess eventually at some point it evolved having "Would you kindly" in that sort of like thick accent. And I don't think if it was if it was a different voice actor going, "Would you kindly do this, please?" I think that would stand out a lot more if they repeated it over and over. But I think that accent specifically makes that.
Where it's like, is that just an Irish thing? They're constantly saying.
I mean, it just kind of flowed very well at the end of his sentences too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it was just always just.
Would you kindly?
Yeah, yeah, it worked.
Pat O'Connor says on that front, he's from Ireland. He says, I know you guys found the whole Irish accent thing a bit over the top, but I think that plays into the ultimate reveal in Fontaine's intelligence overall. Rapture is a multicultural city, and throughout the game we hear Asian, Eastern European, English, Italian, German, and various American accents. It makes sense for Fontaine's everyman guys to be another immigrant seeing their fortunes in Rapture. I think it creates a more believable and relatable character while also facilitating a liquid snake twist by allowing the voice actor to portray the characters using wildly different accents. As an Irishman myself, it was a rare and amazing experience to hear an authentic Irish accent voiced by an Irish actor in a video game. I didn't know that it was authentic. But if he's Irish and he says it sounds good, then all right.
He's more of an expert on it than any of us.
Yeah, that voice actor must have. If he did both, I'm not sure. He must have had a lot of fun in that booth doing these very
Fontaine voice.
It's okay. Fontaine. It's so stupid. The idea of him going so over the top where it's just like maniacal laughter. Like, Atlas is a somewhat interesting character and you feel for him with the family. Like, they could have reined that stuff in by 300% and it still would have worked as him being a villain. But it's so over the top with him just calling over the intercom just to taunt you mercilessly. It's like, what are you doing, man? He used to be a human being.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. Like, if they had just played it off as like more of a shadowy, sinister character, like that would have been so much more interesting. Or even like, a nerd. I wanted to fight a nerd when I got to
JV.
That's true.
Yeah, he has this weird drawl where he's just, all right, kid. You think you're so cool.
He sounds like a boxer who just got beat too much in the mouth.
Yeah, for sure. But he brings up the Liquid Snake comparison. For all the praise about like the "would you kindly" twist, the whole twist of like, oh, the guy guiding you along was secretly evil. It's like this is done 1,000 times.
Well, it's that it's packaged in like the way. Have you guys seen The Usual Suspects? That movie from 1995 with Kevin Spacey. Yeah, you have you?
Oh, the 1995 film Usual Suspects. Yes, JV. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I never know with you, Ben Hansen.
I love Usual Suspects. Yeah.
Yeah, but that it's packaged that way with like the flashbacks, like. I think that's what makes it stand out to people. Whereas the other ones, like the Metal Gear Solid Liquid Snake twist, is just that one's more subtle. Which sounds hilarious because we're talking about Metal Gear Solid.
Right.
BioShock is like hammering it in your face for like that whole sequence.
They're
with
wrenching it.
Ryan. Yeah, wrenching it.
Yeah. Paul, also from Ireland. International audience. I love this. As a big fan of BioShock, I really don't like, quote, the twist. I find the finger wagging at the player for doing as he was told is uninteresting as there is no other choice. You either do what Atlas says to progress or stop playing. What are your thoughts on this?
I think the twist wasn't necessarily to be like a Spec Ops kind of twist where they were like, you're kind of messed up for doing this, but more like, isn't the illusion of choice kind of
exactly.
Like it's a joke.
That's the whole point is it's trying to bring up the topic of illusion of choice.
Yeah, but I can definitely see how someone would take that sequence and say like, well, what else was I supposed to do?
Especially if they're playing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Now.
I felt there was a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot of depth.
Yeah,
to
the first time I saw that, like I played that sequence back in like 2007. It was one of those things where I have to stop playing and be with myself with my thoughts for a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah, no, I still think it's powerful. Like all these years later, I still think it's powerful.
Andrew from Florida writes in, he says, when I first played BioShock, when it came out, I hated it. And then everything changed when the hammer was dropped and Andrew Ryan's life was ended by my own hand. He thinks it's one of the greatest twists of all time. Do you think BioShock would be this entrenched in gaming culture if it wasn't for the twist?
Absolutely not.
No, yeah.
It's largely dependent on that hook?
Absolutely. Like it hinges on that hook.
I mean, I still think if they removed that segment, it'd be a fun game.
Yeah,
it'd be a fun game.
It would be
fun
like
to
play,
yeah.
but
we would not be talking about it.
It would be a much more likely subject for like a replay or something where it's like, oh, remember this game? Remember BioShock?
What an original idea.
Yeah, and whereas now it's just like it's the most talked about game. It's like one of the most talked about games for that.
We didn't see that a whole lot back then, and now we have like Stanley Parable and all these other things that talk about choice in video games. But there, it did it in a really sophisticated way. that really got you thinking. So
Right.
Yeah, it would be talked about as much as everything post the twist, which is never mentioned. So Mike Leha from North Adams says, I would definitely agree. The game peaks after Fort Frolic. It seemed that the remaining levels were a lot more straightforward and less room to explore. So after the game's big reveal, I have a difficult time viewing Andrew Ryan as my enemy. To me, he's just a man with a failed vision. He may rank high on the food chain of Rapture, but it's really that S-Bag Atlas or Fontaine who gets my blood boiling, making it personal. I almost feel sympathetic of Ryan, his own vision turned against him through Fontaine. He looks disheveled in BioShock 2's audio logs, making that image of a man struggling with his own creation even more sad, knowing his fate from the previous game. At any rate, I've come to the conclusion that Andrew Ryan is merely the face of Rapture, but Fontaine is the true antagonist in this story. Do you guys have more hate for Fontaine than Andrew Ryan? Any sympathy there?
No sympathy.
No? We're
No, I
saying
mean,
that
I
you're kind
have-
of into
Sorry
Ryan?
I thought you meant Fontaine.
Okay, well, let's go with Ryan.
I have sympathy for Andrew Ryan, absolutely. It's that he it's interesting because he is trying to build. He obviously loves Rapture and what he built, and it's like seeing that fail and crumble before him is devastating.
Yeah, for me, it's not a matter of like hating one or the other more. I just think that Ryan is like an idea that's brilliantly executed, and the Atlas/Fontaine is a really cool idea that's not well executed at all, especially in the latter half where it's revealed to be Fontaine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I like Fontaine's accent more than I like his character.
Yeah, I like the switch in the accent, but it just
I
he
don't.
falls so flat when you figure out who he actually is.
What was the whole little nugget when Fontaine said, I was even a guy from China for 6 months? Ain't that weird?
There's in that latter half, I feel like there's a lot of stuff they set up and then don't follow through. Like he keeps questioning, like, Tenenbaum's not the kind of not the person you think she is, because he talks about like, isn't it a little weird that someone would survive both World War II and Rapture?
Right. Well,
what kind of person would have to do that? And then they don't do anything like that.
That's because they deal with it in the book.
Really?
Like it's really weird because like Fontaine and Tenenbaum actually have a sexual relationship in the book.
Cool.
That it's just like, and it's hilarious because it's 2 pages where it just happens, and Tenenbaum's like, "Yeah, let's do it," and then never comes up again, never.
So what is
and then and the thing with the acting is what is it? Fontaine like is a con man and an actor, and like that's just what it was. Like there's a good portion of the book dedicated to explaining his sketchy past to someone, like just making it with various accents and makeup and stuff.
Would you recommend this book?
I mean, if you like BioShock, sure, the writing's not that great, but
Okay.
yeah.
So what was the whole thing like? What was he alluding to with Tenenbaum? Like, was that he just was like a jilted lover, or?
A bit, because Tenenbaum is like implied to be involved with sort of Nazi kind of experiments, so it's just kind of strange, like, or kind of skeevy a little bit.
Yeah, I don't feel like they
didn't trace that out in the game that well.
Okay.
Well, there's in the game. There's one audio log from like the paparazzi guy talking about Tenenbaum and Fontaine being together and whatnot. Let's see. So people writing about the twist a lot. Let's see. So people also wrote in a little bit more about the gameplay. We have Nicholas who says, I think it'd be interesting to talk about how the player's death is handled in BioShock. One issue I have with narrative-focused video games is that the death respawn cycle usually breaks the immersion, i.e. is handled in a narratively inconsistent way. Side note, Idle Thumbs actually talked about this when discussing Inside. They also mentioned Steve Gainer's podcast with Ken Levine, which I do recommend as well. Anyways, they say, BioShock at least somewhat solves this problem by using the Vita chambers, which remove the immersion-breaking return to a load or menu screen upon death. They also try to tie the underlying technology to the lore, even if it basically boils down to something plasmids. I still feel the system is not entirely logical. Someone drags Jack into a Vita chamber every time he dies. He's cloned, but then where is his body? Another side note, is there a first-person shooter where the player actually sees his deceased past selves lying where they died?
A first-person shooter.
In Prey, you turn into a ghost when you die, don't you? But you go to like the spirit realm or whatever.
Like World of Warcraft?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One other thing that I think this is also in the remaster, and I'm more certain of this in the thing in the beginning of the game. I'm pretty sure that when you died in the original game, it would just cut to white and then you're in the Vita chamber, whereas in this one they have this whole sequence where you fly, like your point of view flies from your body to the Vita chamber really
I can
quickly.
say you are 100% incorrect on this, Serial.
Do they do
Yeah,
that?
because I switched back to the original version.
Oh,
and it totally
really?
jumps back through it.
I
I was
guess-
thinking, like, it's pretty impressive tech for 2007 to kind of like rewind you through everything
Oh.
you've done, even if it is.
I guess I
crudely-
didn't. Yeah, I guess maybe.
Yeah, it's totally there. What do you guys think about that idea of narratively working respawning into a game?
I think it's really cool if you can pull it off.
Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah.
But in terms of seeing your past selves, it reminds me of this platformer called Claws. I don't know if any of you have played
No.
it, but it's this little indie platformer that came out earlier this year. And there's this one area called the glitch world, and like everything is glitchy, and you're going through, and every time you die, a copy of yourself is made, your corpse. But you actually have to use your death in clever ways. Like every time you die, you have to kind of climb onto your corpse to make a bridge across a gap.
Oh, perfect.
We're back at corpses again.
Good old handy corpses.
You know,
Speaking
yeah,
of corpses,
it's topical. apparently.
there's a game by Suda Goichi called Flower, Sun, and Rain, where the entire premise is like Groundhog Day, where the whole thing is you're supposed to stop this bomb from going off in a plane, and every day it still happens, so you have to rewind or whatever.
Okay.
And they have this really cool visual thing where the plane always flies past like the image of the sun and then explodes right after, which is like some surreal thing. But at the end of the game, you find the layer where all the people from all of your cells from the previous days are, and they're all just stacked on top of each other. Like you realize that there's been this machine that's just been cranking out copies of you every day.
cool.
It's a pretty it's a
cool.
pretty cool sequence.
A little bit like Swapper,
Yeah.
if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
So Chuck from Maine is talking on a similar point, but he has a problem with it. He says, during your first BioShock Game Club segment, you mentioned several influences BioShock has had on the industry. I've heard it credited with starting another trend that you didn't talk about, which many gamers would say is a negative thing, removing all penalties for dying. When you respawn, the game state is exactly how you left it. Because of this, literally, you can go through the game with just the wrench and you're still guaranteed to eventually succeed. This was the first major game to start this trend, and it seemed to be a big spark for the lowering of difficulty in games in general. Do you think this assertion is fair? And if so, do you ink the trend toward easier gaming has been a negative thing? Thank you for taking the time to read.
Absolutely not. Let there be easier gaming. Like, I think, you widen how many people you can let in and, really enjoy what video games have to
It's
offer.
such personal choice, though.
Yeah.
And I've never been one who likes overly difficult games. I just find that frustrating.
And you can still bump
And
this thing
I
up to
don't see
hard.
why
Yeah.
that should be.
You
I
can
should
turn
be
that
ashamed
off.
of that in a
Yeah.
way. Everyone has their experiences that they prefer, and I personally liked BioShock for that fact.
Yeah, and it's not like there is, a lack of super hard games like that are just hard
No.
at their normal.
Or even the
There-
ability to make this game really hard. If you wanted to.
like,
Absolutely.
like Dark Souls
There are-
and stuff.
I also feel like by the time BioShock came out and like kind of did away with that, people were already sort of like claiming the downfall of like video games being too easy just because of regenerating health.
Yeah.
Right. Which is around that same era then, I guess, in Modern Warfare. Then.
I don't think that it's necessarily the catalyst. I think it's more like if you want to take that line of thinking, I feel like it's more of a symptom than the catalyst.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on the front, we talked about it a lot with the last episode, but I think one of the biggest accomplishments with BioShock is taking sophisticated gameplay, different ways to approach these combat situations, a pretty complex plot, and making it so approachable. And so the Vita Chambers respawn thing, I just see it as another layer of like, yeah, we want people to actually enjoy playing this game.
And I think on some level it makes it more accessible for people who don't play a whole lot of games.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, BioShock to me is incredible because it takes, so many philosophical ideas that would just on their own sort of be, oh, well, let's read this stuff in a boring textbook, but makes it digestible in a blockbuster sort
Yeah.
of shooter. Like,
Yeah.
that's
very
incredible.
well done
For
in
sure.
That way.
That is just incredible.
Well, speaking of really thoughtful ideas here, Barbara Joe writes in again and says, "What's with all the dead cats? I came across quite a
saw
few
those
during my
too.
playthrough. Aside from the occasional fish here and there, that was the only evidence of animal life in Rapture. It struck me as very strange. With Rapture being such a large city, I would have thought there'd be some dogs, birds, or some other kinds of pets, but there are only cats. Do you think there's any significance to this? Simple set dressing, metaphor for Rapture's self-destructive nature, in-game representation of Schrodinger's cat? Thoughts?"
I got nothing.
I don't know. I remember finding a dead cat on a stove, and I'm like, man, how did that happen? Do I
Who's
want to
bringing
know
cats
what's going
down
on
here?
here?
I feel as someone who recently hunted for apartments, I feel like the dogs have sometimes their own separate rent, and sometimes it's really expensive. So
true.
I feel like dogs would have been too expensive to have in Rapture. Also, they could have more likely to have destroyed Rapture by just like bursting a pipe or something.
Not to mention, like I've watched and read a lot of Heathcliff, and he loves fish skeletons to eat, and so there must be so many fish skeletons down there. The cats can just shove a whole fish in their mouth and pull out the fish skeleton perfectly. It's the easiest pet. And cats are monsters, just like the Splicers. So it all works out. Liam
monsters.
says from North Carolina, he says, "Hey, GI, I'm sure you're aware of the failed BioShock movie that was to be directed by Gore Verbinski several years back. He was the Pirates of the Caribbean director. Having completed the game and with the story fresh in your minds, do you think a good film adaptation of this story could be made? Who would you want to direct the film? Who would you cast as Jack or Andrew Ryan? P.S. The BioShock prequel novel is actually quite good."
Yeah, that's the book. Yep. Absolutely not.
No movies.
No, it would have to be like an HBO miniseries about the fall of Rapture.
Yeah,
but like BioShock itself works as a video game. It would not work as a movie, I think.
I think it could work.
Not the story that we play. I don't think the story we play as Jack could
I think
work.
so much of BioShock is that interactivity, you know.
I think having the
It's
twist would be
so-
laughable in a movie of like, oh, you've been following
It
the wrong
would.
orders. Like, yeah, okay, I've seen a movie before. I
Yeah.
understand this.
Some of the philosophical stuff would still stand, but a lot of the narrative twists would just fall flat, I would say.
That's not to say it could not be perfectly enjoyable, especially as like a dumb sort of
But it
horror
would-
movie.
yeah.
Dumb.
For those of us that have played the game, I think
Yeah, it would.
I would watch.
It would lose its luster.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I definitely agree with JV that.
But
Something set in that universe would be cool.
yeah, like a prequel series about okay, well here's Ryan or here I was about to say Reiner.
Everybody does.
Andrew Reiner.
I was thinking about things earlier, and I was like, yeah, Andrew Reiner. Wait.
But like Ryan building the city and watching it fall apart, like a 10-episode miniseries would be great.
Yeah.
I would watch that.
For sure.
Who would you cast?
As Andrew Ryan.
Andrew Reiner.
I think it's the only way to go. That or like Walt Disney in his 30s. Just clone him somehow.
I'd go Josh Brolin.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I don't know. Josh Brolin's got a little bit too much of like Southern stuff. Whenever he does that role, he just sounds sort of like a roughneck.
I feel like he could shave off that accent, maybe.
Maybe no.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, he's a regular Fontaine. He can do whatever he wants. Your question is Jack. I mean, which hand model do you get to kind of be right in front of the camera? It's really tough.
Well, just get the guy who did what was that first person movie?
Hardcore Henry.
right.
Yeah, just get Hardcore
Yeah,
Henry.
my favorite actor, the protagonist from Hardcore Henry.
Good lord.
Can you
that
make
movie.
a good
Oh, my.
fist and a curled arm shooting plasmids? That's all that matters. But on this podcast, this very podcast, when we interviewed Ken Levine, he said that he was doing something or approving some script in the BioShock universe. When I asked about the movie, then he said like, "Oh, nothing's ever really dead in Hollywood." So maybe there's still something on the horizon. I'm with you. I would love to see it as a miniseries. I think it could do really well, told long form, but maybe not Jack's story
Yeah.
per se.
I'm good with
Sure.
I'm good. I think we've had all we can with Jack's story.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could just have something in the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elise, first time finishing BioShock. What were your overall thoughts? What'd you think?
I loved it. I mean, a lot of the twists I hadn't seen firsthand. I knew about a lot of them, but I thought it was great. I thought it really held up even after all these years. It was great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I recommend it to people who haven't
And
played it.
I think out of anyone, I was just fascinated by Andrew Ryan's character. That really pulled me in.
What a dreamboat.
Oh boy. No, that's Steinman.
That's right. Oh man, Simon. Yeah, I was really amazed by how accessible it was.
Yeah.
The back half, I was really amazed
and just
by
so
how much
much-
people love it.
So much fun to play at the same time, you know, like
Yeah.
testing out all the different plasmids, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the story in the back half. World
Yeah.
clearly amazing. Twist maybe gets a little bit too much credit, but I understand 2007 it was a completely different time in the industry and stuff like that. I really, really enjoyed that experience,
Yeah,
except
I
for the
enjoyed it
fetch quests, which was the entire back half.
Yeah.
Do you have any new bold thoughts, JV?
No, I mean, experience that bold or that sort of dull back half it reinforced, just how much I appreciate everything that comes before it, like just how good everything that comes before it is, because you have to forgive a lot of that game.
Yeah.
Like, because that entire back half, like you say, is fetch quest. So everything that comes before it is just kind of magical.
There is one moment that I really enjoyed. I think in the first episode we talked a lot about like, oh, cool, bold decisions and whatnot in the gameplay. There's a moment I think it's right after you kill Andrew Ryan, where they're like opening the door with a blowtorch, the splicers, and it's just this
Yes,
long
right.
burn of that
Yeah,
slowly
that's
going down the
great.
door. And then when it bursts open, it's just chaos. Like it kicks in so hard. It's such a good little moment of suspense.
Right.
That's wonderful, yeah.
Suriel, any takeaway thoughts?
No, I'm good.
Great. Have we exhausted?
Yeah, we have. I think
We-
I've said everything.
Yeah, we've said pretty much everything we want to say.
All right.
All right.
And we hope that the community was able to get every thought they ever had about BioShock off their chest. I really enjoyed reading all the emails. Even if I didn't get to it, I really appreciate you sending that in and playing along with us. It's a super cool thing when you guys do it. That's it for the BioShock Game Club, everybody.
All
right.
Thanks for tagging along, guys.
Yeah. What do you guys want to do next?
That Dishonored 2 idea
I'm
sounds...
into Dishonored too.
Here's the thing. So someone wrote in with it. I think a lot of people in the office would like to do it too. I am not into the idea of doing like 3 immersive first-person shooters or FPS games in a row.
The Cross 3D.
Interesting. I want to
What about
change
the
up
guy
the genre
who
a little bit.
messaged who suggested Earthbound?
That'd be fun.
That would be really... I love Earthbound to death.
Hang on.
so.
JV's face is distorting.
Wow.
It's like there's a tracking error.
No.
I didn't say anything.
Don't...
You monster.
Do not...
You didn't say
I-
anything, but faces say so
We're talking
much.
about this later, FYI.
I plead the fifth.
Would you kindly play Earthbound?
There's a leading contender for Game Club in my mind right now, and it's closer to Earthbound than it is Dishonored 2. But I think it'd be fun to do a newer game next. So we'll definitely.
okay.
Hey, you know what, listeners and viewers, we'll be in touch. We'll let you know what's coming up next. We hope to make the announcement soon. But again, thank you for everybody that watched or listened and enjoyed the programming. Be sure to tune in next Thursday. We're gonna have a new episode of the Game Forum. We're waiting for you. Bye, everybody.
So you're gonna keep playing Paper Mario, you think?
Yeah, I feel like. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, it's Biscuit.
No, I feel like I need to see it through. Just because I bailed on Sticker Star, I feel bad.
I feel bad.
Yeah, it's like I need to keep up with this thing just because I care so much about it. Like it's so fucking close.
Did you want to try to get a 4th? Do you care?
No.
Okay.
If it had experience leveling, you think that'd be
Yes.
the only problem?
Just a variety of characters and just simple
Incentive
fucking
to keep
progression.
fighting,
Now
right?
that you mention it,
Incentive
like
to do anything. It's just like walk to a siloed area, talk to 4 dumb toads that make jokes. All right, go to the next one. It gets stuck on a couple puzzles in between. It's just nothing. There's nothing in there.
the character thing is interesting, just because you're like, I can. If you don't want to add new characters, I guess maybe that's fine. But there's like such a wealth of characters already in the Paper Mario universe. It's like, why can't you
Right.
still use that?
Exactly.
Like just some of the partners from the first 2 games and
Yes,
stuff like
or
that?
just have
Or just like
partners to begin
know.
with. Like they threw them away. Ugh.